OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, bang at 7:30. It's Wednesday morning. It's Ger and Shane with you all the way through until 10 this morning. It is International Week, and so therefore there's nothing happening in the world of men's soccer anyway. It's like everybody is saying something and nobody's saying anything.
I love international weeks because they drag on for so long, and yet you're trying to find something to change the news cycle every single morning, but you end up having the same conversation probably 5 or 6 days in a row. But that's what we love because we're football men and football women, so that's what we like. But this morning, I guess when they put out different people in front of the press every single day, at least it changes the. That's why embargoes exist, because at least we can kind of change the news cycle every single day.
Ivan Toney talking about the Arsenal Twitter. It's like, wow. I think that may well be the bottom of the barrel.
This is a long-standing
for International Week.
Yeah, long-standing feud.
I get it, but it's not very interesting, is it? Is it?
I actually read the back of the paper this morning and I thought it was a bit juicy. So for anyone who isn't aware, this is the tweet that Ivan Toney put up at the start of last season when Brentford beat Arsenal. A long time ago. We're rehashing old stuff here, but Brentford beat Arsenal 2-0 at the start of last season, and Toney tweets after the game something to the effect of "nice kickabout with the lads." Clearly this ruminated in the Arsenal players and Mikel Arteta's minds for the entire intervening period, because I think a couple of the players, maybe after another game that season when Arsenal returned the favour and won, there was a couple of tweets sent with the exact same phraseology as Ivan Toney's
original tweet. Yeah, very
original. And
what about you? I also did that thing that you did to me. I'm clever now.
Yeah, it was playground stuff. And then obviously Tony's been asked about it in the pre-match press conference ahead of the Italy game in the Nations League for England this week. He's in the squad for the first time. It's probably not something he's arse talking about, but then I think he gave them a little bit of a line. He bit the fishing media. He gave them what they wanted and said, yeah, it was a bit cringe when he saw the Arsenal players. It was funny.
Again,
yeah, it was funny the first time and then cringe the second time, and now it's a little bit embarrassing from an Arsenal perspective.
Okay, you're talking me into this. I'm now interested. He's calling Arsenal embarrassing and they're top of the league, and is it a small club mentality? Are Arsenal a small club? Text us now 087 918 180.
That is small club mentality stuff though. Like, you shouldn't be getting bogged down by a Brentford player's tweet and really letting it affect you,
or else like all of these elite sports people who are separated from each other by hair's breadth, they require every tiny slight to be turned into motivation.
It wasn't that offensive either, really, was it? Like, nice kickabout with the lads. It's a little bit sarcastic. It's a little bit of a jokey slag of the opposition, but I mean, it's not end of the world stuff. But clearly, it's been sitting in. Mikel Arteta strikes me as a man who would hold a grudge. Like, I've only seen a little bit of the all or nothing, but I mean, he seems like a man
in the Pep school.
Yeah, 100%.
They've never forgotten anything that's ever been written about them ever.
Yeah, this is John O'Mahony, Fancy Dan stuff. I think Arteta's probably brought this up in the dressing room at some stage. I'd be shocked if he hadn't. And yeah, like Tony's laughing.
Isn't it weird that all matters? That's the weird part about this, that it seems to matter.
And it all came from one little tweet.
And like, how many of the Arsenal players who were actually very important were played in that game, the original one? Like,
yeah, that's the thing. A lot of them are gone now, and it's irrelevant. It's the start of last season. This is how long ago we're going. But I'm in the Ivan Toney camp here. I want to make this as big a thing as the Vardy Rooney Tweetgate affair, but sadly it's not going to reach those levels. Yeah, it's just a little bit of childish behaviour from Arsenal's behalf. I like Toney, seeing him speak during the week. I think yesterday he was in front of the press and he was talking about getting that call from, Southgate rings Thomas Frank, the Brentford manager, to offer him the opportunity to tell Ivan Toney that he made the England squad for the first time in his career. He was driving into training, Toney, I think, when Thomas Frank called him. He was a little bit behind time for training, so he sees the call coming in from Thomas Frank and he thinks, I'm in trouble here. Tardiness has got me a fine from the club. But Thomas Frank, he answers the phone to Thomas Frank and he proceeds to tell him that he's in the England squad, which is obviously a lifelong dream. So he's buzzing. He seems like a really likeable guy, Ivan Toney, quality footballer as well. So delighted for him to get an international call up. But I mean, the tweeting stuff is that's the press looking for a little and finally question to keep the papers rolling this week.
Callum Chambers and Bernd Leno played in that game for Arsenal.
This is how long ago this game was.
I mean, things move on. I don't know. Maybe you need to add a little bit of spice to try and sell that fixture out the next time. I don't know. I mean,
and it's back page in a couple of the papers.
Well, there's nothing else going on because it's International Week.
Yeah,
that's the point. Like
even Eric Dier. Like, how long ago did Eric Dier jump into the crowd against Norwich?
I mean, it seems like a lifetime ago.
It's a couple of years anyway. It must be 2020. Oh no, it wouldn't be 2020 because of COVID. There'd be no crowds.
Pre-COVID.
Would it be pre-COVID? It probably is.
I mean, look, time is a flat circle.
Time is irrelevant since COVID started. But
if you told me that was like 3 weeks ago, I would go, yeah. If you told me it was 3 years ago, I'd go, yeah, that makes sense.
Time is only a construct of human perception anyway, as we all know. So, I don't know. Like the Eric Dier, he was asked about it obviously in the press conference for England yesterday. Would you do it again? Because he was asked about abuse in stands. He said at a recent Chelsea-Tottenham game, a lot of his family members were receiving vitriolic abuse. And he actually pointed out that it was abuse from both sets of fans, which was interesting as well. And it's got to the point now where his family no longer attend matches where Eric is playing, and which is it's a sad state of affairs. Like he said yesterday in the press conference, he didn't want to touch on it too much, but he also again gave the press their little couple of lines that kept the story flowing. And he said, "Look, if I had to do it again and jump into the crowd to protect my brother, I would." So look, again, it's probably an interesting line. It's 10 seconds worth of Eric Dier speak that has given us a full page in some of the papers this morning.
Aaron Ramsey says he should never have left Arsenal, or still doesn't know why he had to leave Arsenal.
These England golden kids have some sort of...
He's also Welsh, but...
Sorry, the British golden kids have some sort of aura about them.
An easy mistake. I mean, they go on.
I just think that there's something about the English/Welsh/Scottish players that there's a bit of an attitude about them. They certainly think when they look back in their careers, I was unbelievable. Aaron Ramsey was an unbelievable footballer. He had a couple of years where he was... Would you call him world class?
No, I wouldn't say world class. World class means he's going to get in the best 11 in the world.
He's on that level below. He was on that level below for a year or two.
He was very, very good for a couple of seasons. Scored a lot of goals.
Yeah.
I don't know how effective he was as a controlling a game, but he's a player who scores a lot of goals, very, very valuable. So,
but it would be easy for Aaron Ramsey to say that looking at Arsenal now, if they were 7th or 8th or 9th in the table. Arsenal are top of the Premier League. They've done some good things since he's left. Arteta's finally got the band back together and sorted some things out at the club. So
I was always under the impression that he had kind of forced the move over salary issues and wanted to get paid better, and somebody else came in and said, "We'll pay you better," and he was like, "Yeah, okay."
Yeah, and I think I remember at the time him talking about going to Italy as a good life experience, bit of a cultural change, cultural shift. So yeah,
scored 10 goals in the 17-18 season
for Arsenal. Yeah,
he scored 7 goals in the Premier League and 4 in the Europa League in the 17-18 season, and 10 assists. So obviously it was important in terms of
goal involvements.
Yeah, and that's over 30 games that season. So that's not a huge amount of games.
Yeah, I don't know where he's getting these ideas from, Aaron Ramsey, but always interesting when a player does a wide-ranging interview and says I shouldn't have left, or they shouldn't have let me go, or has different notions about how their life has turned out.
Scored 10 goals in the 13-14 Premier League, only played 23 games with 9 assists. So again, very effective in not a high number of games.
Yeah. He always seemed to be involved in goals.
Slightly injury prone, you'd be saying.
Yeah, and that was probably partly the issue with him leaving Arsenal as well. That you don't want to hold on to an injury prone player. Jack Wilshere was often the same. But he's one of those people, Aaron Ramsey. He seems to have a good brain, and I'd like to see what he does after the game as well when he retires. Does he go into media? Does he go into coaching? I know Wilshere's involved in the Arsenal Academy, isn't he, as well? So interesting to see where Aaron Ramsey's career takes him afterwards.
Yeah, look, again, it's International Week. Players giving interviews. Colm wants us to explain this though. Ramsey, Wilshere, Walcott and Oxlade-Chamberlain, good young overhyped players who didn't quite live up to the hype. That's it.
Blaming Arsene Wenger here?
Is it Wenger's fault that none of these players... I mean, did Theo Walcott not live up to... it wasn't his fault Sven put him in a squad.
Yeah.
He, as we know, he scored more goals in the Premier League or in the Champions League than Zinedine Zidane.
Well, of course, the famous fact. I'd have it as a bit of a coincidence. I know Colm isn't going to like that, but almost a coincidence that these 4 young English lads went to pot after the Arsenal days? Like, maybe they got their best years at Arsenal in, and it took too much out of their bodies.
I think that there's probably a lot to be said for not having the whole of the club's future thrust onto your shoulders at a very young age. And in other more successful clubs who are winning, they would have played less. There would have been less expectation, and so therefore the good stuff that they did would have been. I don't know. Maybe Jack Wilshere got kicked too much in the ankle, and that's a completely separate issue from what happened with Theo Walcott and Oxlade-Chamberlain. Like,
yeah, and there's an issue that you gotta.
Oxlade-Chamberlain wasn't at that level, really, was he? He's like a very good, competent Premier League player over a decade who again has had loads of injury problems.
Yeah, something similar. I'd like to see not the same path being trodden by Ethan Nwaneri, this young 15-year-old kid who came on for Arsenal last weekend.
Yeah, like everyone's like, oh, isn't it great? The kid's played, and you're like, is it really that great for him now? How does he go back to being a normal 15-year-old for the next couple of seasons, where he now thinks, oh, I'm supposed to play, I'm supposed to be part of the squad every week, and that's not going to happen.
It's rare you see a 15-year-old seen as mature enough. Yeah, obviously you're the 16 and 17-year-olds who are seeing it. He had to use a different dressing room, I think, as the senior players for child protection reasons. So he was in his own little room while the rest of the team got changed. Which just shows how young he is.
Yeah, do they think that through? No, we've set the record. Look how great we are. I have it on my CV now that I brought young talent through faster than anybody else. But like, did they really think it through?
Yeah, the thing with Nwaneri, he seems to be a player, but like a prodigious talent anyway. He has been always playing above his.
Is this something to make sure that he signs a long-term deal with them so he doesn't go for a free when he turns 18 or something? Is there like some weird ulterior motive here that's actually financially motivated as opposed to actually keeping the player's career long-term? Like, I don't know. It just there was a celebration of this thing, which is record-breaking, and so therefore it's going to be great. But is it always great?
No, like maybe Arteta wanted the lure, the luster of having played the youngest ever player in the Premier League. The record's always going to be broken. These records always are. Harvey Elliott's looked like it wouldn't be broken for years, and here's Nwaneri doing it. Like, apparently he scored in some scouting game. Was it 8-0 or something? He scored all 8 goals for his team at his age group, but got the scholarship. He's a really smart kid as well. Apparently would have got a scholarship nearly on his academic capabilities alone. Really bright kid, and maybe that's why he's been brought in. He's mature, he's bright, he gives off an aura of someone that's not 15.
Yeah, I mean that's all, and look, that's all great. It's just that you never know how someone's going to deal with the hype and the pressure that comes now with this, which was completely unnecessary. Like, they're 3-0 up. It's easy. You can go on at 3-0 up. It's like, but you're 3-0 up. You don't need this. Like, there hasn't been an injury crisis. This isn't COVID. The squad's doing great. You've real depth. Like, I don't know.
I think we've become accustomed to young players though. Like, with the hype that followed the likes of Wayne Rooney, for example, when he was 16, was at a abnormal level. I don't think that hype would be around a player like that again, because we're so used to big talents coming through. Do you think it's worse?
Well, I think it will be worse. Yeah, like I think like Wayne Rooney went as a teenager and was about to dominate a major tournament, but for injury. Like, I think, and like, again, all these cases are different. But like, it would Wayne Rooney wish that he had come through as fast as he did, or had been given a bit more time to acclimatise to the pressures of being the most famous teenager in Britain?
But then, what is the age? What is the right age? Like, is it 16? Is it 17? Do you wait until they're 18? You could argue if you're good enough. If you're old, if you're good enough, you're old enough.
There's a difference between being good enough to play, and there's a difference between being old enough to manage your life and all of the stuff that comes with it, and like making sure that you got the right people around you.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's in the club's interest, and sometimes it's in the player's interest. But like, those two things are not always. The Venn diagram overlaps between the club and the team, but they're not a circle. Like, the club are interested in you as an asset and wringing out of you everything they possibly can, and you have to be interested in protecting yourself and making sure that you aren't in any way taking unnecessary risks. Is playing a 15-year-old against men unnecessary risks? I would say it probably is. Like,
but then it's the manager's responsibility to play the player when he feels they are ready, as in.
But what's the manager's real responsibility? Who's the manager's real responsibility to? Ultimately, when it comes down to it, who does he answer to?
To the board.
And himself.
And himself as well. And the fans, I suppose.
Never the fans, really.
No,
it's not the fans, because the
Not in a
fans don't
tangible
sack him.
sense.
But like, that's all. Like, his paycheck is connected to making sure that the board are happy. Okay, the fans can turn on a manager and they can get him sacked, and I understand the point you're making, right? But like, his job is to make sure that the club's shareholders make more money, and I don't know what the thinking here was, but like, there's just an automatic. Yeah, isn't it great? We've set a new record.
Is that the manager's job?
Constantly going forward.
It's the manager's job not to win trophies. Obviously, winning money is
no. I mean, that's like some romantic pie in the sky notion of football in the 70s.
Yeah, but it should be
manager's job is not to win trophies. Manager's job is to make money for the owners, and the owner's job is to make money, and that's what this sport is. And you're a Man United fan, so you know that.
Yeah, but the director, the club's directors need to be fairly in charge of. The chief executives need to be in charge of making money. By winning trophies, you're going to make the club more successful and more financially
Champions
liberal.
League qualification was the be all and end all, as we saw. Like Wenger's the last, I don't know how long, it seemed like forever. Was it 8 years? Was it longer? I don't know. But success was qualifying for the Champions League because they were rebuilding the stadium, and that's all that the owners cared about. Like, success has changed.
Yeah.
Success is now making money, because that's what the point of the owners come in and decide, this is an asset that's undervalued, I'm buying it and I'm going to make money off the back of this, and at some point I'm going to flip it for 5, 10, 15 times what I paid for it. And so the manager's job is to make sure that the owners are happy, really.
Yeah.
Like, in an ideal world, the manager's job would be to win trophies, but that's la 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 now.
Yeah, but my point on Arteta and Ranieri was that, like, Arteta's not going to play the kid if he doesn't have those people around him that you mentioned. You know, like, I'd like to think any decent football manager wouldn't do that. You know, if he doesn't have the people around him, if he doesn't have the right attitude, if he doesn't seem mature enough, he's not going to get playing, and that's what you would hope.
So I'm getting grief now for not. Oh, this is only Arsenal. Why aren't you complaining about Liverpool doing the same thing? Like, I mean, it's just happened this week. But if Liverpool were playing Harvey Elliott too young, did Harvey Elliott not miss a lot of time because of an injury?
Yeah.
Like, was he physically ready for it as well? What age was he when he made his debut?
But this is the thing: is everyone's physical development not different? Like, Harvey Elliott and Ethan Ranieri aren't physically the same. They weren't physically the same as Wayne Rooney. Like, there is no magic number. This is the age you should make, and I
would agree with you, right? So I don't think I think when you're saying what is the age, it's like I don't know. It definitely is case by case, but it just feels like 15 is too young. Like,
what about the 13-year-old kid who played in the North for, was it Glenavon recently? The youngest ever player in the UK, I think. Was it Norman Whiteside's record? But like, 13.
Yeah.
I mean, and he looked 13, by the way. Like, he was a 13-year-old looking 13-year-old.
It is amateur football, right?
Well,
like, really it is. No matter what they say, it's amateur football.
But he's still playing against grown men.
It shouldn't be happening.
In a competitive league.
It shouldn't
be
happening. Like, even in the GAA, you're trying to stop that happening. You know? Like, there are rules now. There is, like, and under the guise of burnout, they're like, you can't be doing that. Just can't be doing that.
Yeah, and you don't really see it in Gaelic football too much. Like, you'd see maybe in the club game, you'll get the odd 16-year-old supreme talent coming through. But generally speaking, I think clubs around the country are fairly good at nurturing talent and letting them play the minors before they break into the senior team. Because especially in Gaelic football, you have to have developed physically, obviously. I
remember Norman Whiteside playing in the World Cup. He was actually 17, Shifty lads, breaking Pele's records. A man-child like Rooney. Again, like, in the end, all that stuff caught up with him. The injuries in his 20s caught up with Norman Whiteside. Like, if Rooney had been held back another 18 months and his body had been allowed to physically develop, would he have been a better player in his late 20s and 30s?
I mean, he still finished as a record goal scorer for club and country.
You cannot say he fulfilled his potential. Like, you just can't.
No, but
I mean, you just can't. And would he have learned to become a better professional?
Potentially.
That's the bit.
As then he was thrust into the limelight too young.
Well, he clearly didn't have the capability of dealing with the media pressure, which he's talked about, the insane levels of anger that he felt at, who was Jonathan Ross, right? He comes up in the column of the book. They were making jokes about him and the incidents with the prostitutes. Like, would he have fallen into the issues that he later had if he had actually been protected properly as a 16-year-old. Like, I think that, like, I don't remember which manager it was who gave him his debut, but I'm sure he's delighted. And the goal that he scores against Arsenal, that ends the Invincibles run, doesn't it?
Yeah, but
like, it's history and it's amazing and it's an incredible career. And Wayne Rooney has come out the other side of it, but loads of other people get broken. Like, if you look back at Ravel Morrison is still massive clickbait for every Manchester United fan of a certain age, because they think he was the next coming of George Best or whoever it was, and he is now playing football again at a reasonable level, but never fulfilled his potential because whatever, right? Thrust into the limelight, pressure and expectation. The Wayne Rooney is a unicorn who comes through this, but not everybody makes it that far.
Yeah, and some people can't deal with the pressure, I understand that, but then, like, Ryan Giggs was thrust into the limelight at 17. He was clearly through and went on. Yeah, we know the infidelity and all the issues that came about in his personal life that he admitted to in court, but was that to do with the fact that he was thrust into the limelight at 17? I don't know. I don't think so. I think some people's personalities are their personalities.
It's true that some people's personalities are their personalities, but if you had been hanging out with men in their late 20s and early 30s when you were 17, would you be the same person you are now?
Well,
rich men who have access to drink and the trappings of celebrity, would you have been the same person as you are now?
From my and this is obviously not on anywhere near the same level. When I was 16 and 17, I was playing for my local team, Monaghan Town. We won the Ulster Junior Cup, very successful team.
Going out drinking with the lads after the matches.
Yeah, and I remember we won the Ulster Junior Cup maybe 3 or 4 days before I did my 5th year summer exams, and I was the youngest on the team. And
were you drinking 3 or 4 nights before your exams?
Yeah.
And was that, in retrospect, good for you?
But then the rest of them drank for the following 2 or 3 days, whereas I did the one night and then studied for my exams. Do you know? So I don't think it affected me negatively personality wise. I think actually looking at it, like, now I'm the
what if there'd been like the promise of a massive contract, like, and a fast car.
Unfortunately, Monaghan Town FC didn't have the money.
Do you know what I mean, though? What we're talking about here is like
it's the celebrity that changes,
and it's wealth. Like, it's life-changing wealth. I talk about this a good bit, but Stephen Bradley did a Saturday panel with us before he got the Shamrock Rovers job, where he talked about going to the cash machine and seeing his balance and his motivation disappearing straight away. He's like, well, I'm rich now, I don't need to do anything. And he was very highly rated. And I would say those types of outcomes are more likely when players are exposed too young. And I just think that for Arteta, this is a bit of a vanity thing.
I think that's a personality thing, because some people at 17, 18 would look at the bank account and say, of course it is. That has given me motivation to work harder because of the money I can see in that account.
Of course it's not uniform across, but I think that the players who make it out of that, having been exposed super early in his own changing room because of child protection laws.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's like, but when you say it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because he's a child.
Yeah. I assume that's under 16 maybe, or under 17 that players have to do that. I don't know what the age is, but that just highlights how young he is. But I mean, if they're doing everything right, and if Arteta feels he has the head on his shoulders,
but Arteta doesn't know, and Arteta's not going to be held accountable. If that player, so Arteta is going to be the Arsenal manager for 2.5, 3 years, more than likely. If he has an amazing career, he'll get 7 years, and that kid will be 22 and may not fulfill his potential. And Arteta won't really be held accountable for that or trace it back, because it's not his job. His job is just to churn. Who's good? Throw the shit at the wall. If some of it sticks, great. Who's next?
What about the likes of, say, right, Michael Owen at 18 was a world superstar. Like, on the Off the Ball Roadshow recently, he said that he felt like by 21 he was past his best. So if that is true, then some players need to be started at 16, 17 because they've only got 4 or 5 years before their plateau. Yeah,
it's very difficult scenario to work out exactly. Like, Michael Owen's hamstrings obviously prevented him from being as fast as he was in a later stage of his career, and so I don't know. Could they have managed his career by not playing him so much? Would his hamstrings have popped anyway? Like, I don't know. It's such a...
It's an interesting talking point. Yeah, it's... and maybe the conversation Arteta has is with Wanyeri's parents. You know, maybe you have to, at that age, to chat to a parent or the dependent or whoever, the parent or the uncles or whoever it might be, and decide with them, in liaison with them, if they're ready for
now,
this.
If the manager of the football club where your son hasn't got a full permanent contract comes and says, here, listen, if there's
there's a bit of...
It's probably several millions in this for you. If I don't, again,
the dollar signs in the eyes.
Can he actually sign a full-time contract yet?
Probably have to be 16, do you? I don't know what the rules are in the Premier League, but Yeah, it's an interesting talking point.
Here's what's coming up. It's 7:55. We've got Lee Keegan standing by. Vinny Perth is going to join us at 8:15. We'll get his thoughts on this as well. He's a football manager, so he's going to play the kid. Maybe, I don't know. What do you think, Vinny? You can prepare that one for us. We're also going to talk about the Republic of Ireland, John Duggan's virtual insanity on a hot streak, and we'll bring you the sports pages. We're also going to speak with Brendan Ó Dufaigh today about his son Ogie. He's written a beautiful book. He's put it together, Almost Ogie, and we'll talk to him at around about 9 o'clock this morning. And they're going to hear from Colm Begley around about 9:30 about, I presume, the Aussie rules. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Don't miss our exclusive panel with Leona Maguire and Katrina Matthews live from Dromoland Castle this evening and Off the Ball. It's all in association with the KPMG Women's Irish Open. Now, delighted to say we've got Lee Keegan with us. Lee, good morning to you. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, good. Are you going back next year? Have you decided?
Not the question to open me with.
Nice handy question for you. Well, the reason I'm asking it is because it seems like it's the trendy thing to do at the moment is we're definitely coming back. All the Dubs are back on board, so surely that's here, hang on a second now.
Yeah, but they've got multiple years of me. That's the only difference. So if I get through the club campaign in some shape, I could be okay, but I'll have to see how the next month goes.
We had Joe Canning on the show with Owen famously, where Owen asked him if he was planning retirement and told Owen absolutely not, and minutes later in his very next interview decided that he was going to announce his retirement. So please don't do that to us, Lee.
Yeah, you must have pushed him too hard, lads. That was the problem, but you've asked me nicely, so I'm not going to give away too much here or next week, so don't worry, you're safe enough.
That's why Owen's in Mexico now. How is your game going at the moment? Are you fitting well?
Yeah, doing well actually at the moment. We're in the third round championship now this Saturday with Westport, so we're playing Mayo in a big game Saturday, so get a win there. We're into a quarter final next again, so it's coming thick and fast, which is good, but trying to get recovery can be a bit tricky at times. But yeah, moving well, really enjoyed it actually. It's I think it's nice when you have the club season to yourself and you're not worried about going back and forth sometimes between county and you're doing the right thing, wrong thing by training or playing matches. I just like when you can give a sole focus towards club boys when they are waiting for you most of the year to try and get back and integrate with them again. So really enjoying it at the moment, to be honest, and I think most boys would probably say the same thing. It's
really interesting because there's a definite debate happening, and you would say there is a crew of certainly the diehards or the older crew who are definitely, look, this is a disaster, no one's talking about GAA, it's the best time of the year, it's the 25th anniversary of one team, it's the 20th anniversary of another team, where why aren't we talking about the All-Ireland final this week? The weather is great, and you're saying it's actually great, I'm getting to play club football with my mates.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, and I am somewhat in agreement with people. I mean, it felt weird when the Galway Kerry game ended. It was nearly like an obituary where there was nothing going to happen for a month. But I mean, if I'm talking personally, to be honest, I don't mind it at all, because again, I don't like to refer to the age thing or whatever, or getting older, but I just think sometimes it's nice when you can just dedicate yourself. Right, I've done the county and it didn't work out, really disappointing, fine. Had a couple of weeks to digest it, had a bit of reflection time on how the year went and where it went wrong, where things went well, and so on. But then we're into a club season, and as I said there earlier, I don't have to be pulling myself each way that am I doing the right thing or wrong thing? Am I going to annoy this manager, or is this manager going to be not happy with this? Or so for me, I just love having the sole purpose of giving my whole, I suppose, training regime towards the club guys, because I suppose they could say the same argument about themselves. So they're waiting around how many months of the year, and yeah, we're only giving out about a month and a half of football from county. So I mean, it's much as really. So we can't have it always, to be honest. So yeah, I'm really happy that I can just give my time towards the club and give that a good rattle. We have a great young team at the moment, so that's exciting in itself. Where that brings us glory or not, that's for another time. But I mean, for myself personally, I just love giving my sole purpose towards the club boys there for the time being.
There was obviously the disappointment of that All-Ireland quarter-final against Kerry, but from what you're saying there, there's an element of refreshment in that you've had such a long break now, that's the other side of the coin of getting knocked out of the championship reasonably early, is that you have that time for the club.
Time for the club, but also, again, I'm going to talk a bit selfishly. I time for myself, time for my family, time to meet up with a few friends, go for a few beers, go to weddings, bits like that. It's very hard to plan during the year. And listen, I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that's why you don't play football or you do play football. Of course, when you play, you love it. And I said it more than often that I play football. I love playing football, but it was just nice to. Now listen, it was disappointing not to be involved. Don't get me wrong. I loved to have been in an All-Ireland final day and give it a crack again. But we had a bit of reflection time. As I said, I got to spend time with the kids, the wife, do stuff with my friends, go back to the club. We're totally refreshed, mind switched off, and it's been a breath of fresh air to somewhat, some degree, while also keeping track of what's going on in the world of football as well. But it's definitely it's had its up and downs, absolutely, but more positive than negative, to be honest. Sometimes, and I said this kind of numerous times, football is not dictating my life anyway. When I'm in it, I give everything towards it and I'll enjoy it. But when I'm away from it, I have total other priorities and things that I want to enjoy in life as well. So, yeah, Lee Keegan, the footballer, when he's in, great. But when he's away from it, I absolutely love being away from it as well.
Isn't there a possibility that maybe they could extend the season by 3 or 4 weeks so that it doesn't feel like it's finished so quickly, and that actually, county boards will now know exactly what it's like with the split season? But basically what I'm saying is the split season seems to be largely working, apart from the concerns about the season finishing too early. Move it back 3 or 4 weeks. Let's experiment with this over the next couple of years before we go, no, it doesn't work, throw it out, go back to it.
I don't mind that either. I think that's a fair enough counter argument. If you're going to add additional 2-3 weeks, I don't think that's a big thing for players actually eventing. Sometimes I know, even with the Kerry game, going to the semi-final, even for Kerry, to give them an extra week break, or ourselves the year before, there's no issue with that. Players don't mind that. It's just not dragging the arse of it for weeks and weeks and weeks. So if you're going to put on 2 or 3 weeks, I can tell you from a player point of view, there would be no issue, because you're still getting your downtime after that. There's still multiple weeks that you can just get away, do your fun things, do your family thing, whatever it is, and yet you're still happy. So, and you can go back into your club campaign, whether that's started or not. So again, I'd have no issue with that. I don't think players would. We're only talking a couple of weeks each side of it, and I don't want to come across. I'm not going to come across as the spoiled babies. I'm only just speaking personally. I know players are the exact same. It's just that I think split season kind of works as a major degree in terms of you get your break, but you go back into another club season or a full season. So if we're only talking a month, it's still a month's break. So it's much and much from our point of view.
That what you said earlier about priorities changing, and being able to separate life as a footballer from the rest of life, I guess, and the more important stuff. Is that something you realised early on in your career? Is it only as you mature as a footballer that you realise that you need to have another life outside the game, or has that only come in the last couple of years, or how have you dealt with it?
Oh, he's frozen there, so we'll get Lee back. That was your best question of the day. Yeah, well, listen,
ruined, absolutely ruined. He's it is a breath of fresh air. When you hear footballers talking like that, and understanding that there's a life outside the game. I know most footballers are of that mindset anyway. But
I do think it's important to reflect on giving players downtime. That if you ask Mannion, and we've put out the interview that Jack McCaffrey did with Bernard Brogan on his podcast for us, where he just talked about it being completely all-consuming and feeling broken after drawing an All-Ireland final. I have to go back and do this all again. We just assume that they go training, they manage their lives, but the logistics of managing being an inter-county player and having a job are incredibly difficult. So ask the question again.
Yeah, you're back, Lee. No, the question was just, I was essentially asking, you're talking about priorities changing there over the years, and realising that there's life beyond football, and separating Lee Keegan, the footballer, from the family man, I guess, and everything else. Is that something you realised at a certain point in your career? Is it as you mature as a footballer that you come, more to realise that there's life outside the game?
And the last couple of years in particular, I've learned, I suppose, to just switch off from football. It's great being Lee Keegan, the footballer, or any kind of player being a footballer, but I just love getting away from the game sometimes and just spending time with my family, or just down tools completely from football. I've loads of things in life that I love doing. I like, I suppose, social events. I like tipping away. I love fitness. I'm big into fitness. I love doing a bit of running to myself, or bring the kids off for a spin, or going on a holiday with the family and stuff like that. So I've definitely changed my perspective around priorities in terms of football. As I said earlier, football in my early mid-20s was probably a massive priority. It took a lot of my life. Where now is I can't be as selfish. I need to provide and be more, I suppose, guidance in my personal life rather than football. So football for me is a complete outlet, where before I probably seen it as my sole purpose. And that's not necessarily wrong, but I just enjoy life probably that bit more now, because I'm not solely dedicating my life towards football. But when I'm in it, I enjoy it. I dedicate myself, and I'll push myself to my limit. But when I'm away from it, football is not relevant really to me at times. So
The other thing is that you can't have your entire identity bound up exclusively in your athletic identity. Otherwise, you're not really a good human being. Or you neglect to become a good human being, because we all change and develop, particularly in your 20s. Like the person you are at the start of your 20s and the person you are at the end of your 20s is very different. So maybe this is something that we need to. Maybe the split season is going to help that, where people will be able to like take on stuff outside of the inter-county bubble, which it seems to be used to be 9 months a year.
Yeah, but like that's what I'm saying. Like I suppose people maybe don't know that sometimes, and we think of ourselves that we love to have football for 9 months, and that's great. Don't get me wrong, that's brilliant, excitement. There's game after game, whatever it is. But I as I said, like we are kind of normal people as well. I like just doing the normal mundane stuff around home or around town, just grabbing a coffee or just getting away from the whole athletic GA sport thing. So I do think there is something there to research and look at, possibly. But again, it took me till I was a bit older to realise, and that could be the same in a lot of cases as well. But your priorities do change as your life moves on. Even though I'm not that old, I still think I'm quite fresh in terms of I can still move around a bit, like so. But I definitely look at life a bit differently outside of football.
I have one last football question for you. Where do you play for your club? What position are you playing at the moment?
Centre back.
Right. And do you like that?
I love it.
Are you
unless I'm marking an 18-year-old for another team. But.
Well, I was going to say, are you a holding centre back, or are you like a cut and thrust running forward, Henry Downey style?
I got a goal against Ballintober playing Killian O'Connor's team, so it started off as a runner, but I slowly died away as the game went on, so it became like a kind of a quarterback holding role. So I was telling the young lads to go if you want. So, but yeah, no, I enjoyed it. But I enjoy any business. I don't really mind. I suppose we have a massive squad in Westwood at the moment, so I have that bit more flexibility, being able to probably play higher at the pitch. We've probably we've a good few defenders there, so I don't get tasked with doing the sole purpose job of marking the danger man as much anymore, which is good. So it gives me a bit more freedom and stuff. But yeah, no, it's good. I'm enjoying it. I don't know if I could last 70 minutes at a 12, 13k marathon run, but I'm still doing okay.
I read in the Mayo News, Lee, this could be wrong, and it sounds wrong, that the goal against Ballintober earlier in the month was your first championship goal for Westport in 13 years. Is that right?
Correct. I'm a point scorer, not a goal scorer.
Right. So you don't get the bomb as forward maybe with Westport as often as with Mayo. Is that the way that works?
Well, they're giving out to me a good bit for getting in the way of them, so I tend not to cross halfway too often. But if I do, then I was told I need to do a bit of damage. But we've like I said, we've an exciting group of lads they're kind of a breath of fresh air to be around and play football with. I suppose it's that again, that young, naive kind of young lad that comes in, so I get great enthusiasm for watching these lads. So I've been told enough times, get out of their way and let them play by the football.
Is there not a couple of years at the end of your career where you could be a half forward, just running across the line?
I tried that, but I was told I get a nosebleed if I don't face goal. So it hasn't worked out before. So I think actually Horan tried me back in 2013 against Tyrone and Kerry, and that was about as long-lived as I got.
How did it go? Why did it not survive?
I got 1 point against Tyrone, and I ended up probably against Kerry. I ended up in more of the half-back line because I forgot I was a half-forward. I think it's just the unnatural comfort of not being able to see the opposition goal. Too much looking at our own goal. So Alan Dillon tried coaching me 101 for a couple of sessions, but I lost a bit of interest when he was telling me his political life back then, so it didn't go too well for me. So I'll stick to the defending side of things. Fair enough.
Oisin McConville is in the papers today. I think it might be from his podcast, talking about the new setup. He says experienced managers I've spoken to all said the importance of keeping it fairly tight. I mean, that's not a tight backroom team. He's talking about Mayo here. That McStay has. It feels a wee bit overloaded. If I'm honest, former county boss Stephen Rochford and high-profile coaches Toney Buckley and Lee McHale are part of McStay's management team. It's so difficult to manage. You're trying to manage players, but you're also trying to manage backroom teams. And a lot of times, a lot of the egos can be in backroom teams as opposed to the players on the pitch. What did you think of that?
Well, we all know Oisin's quite opinionated, so and I actually like Oisin. I have a great time for Oisin. He's one of my favourite pundits. Listen, I mean, I suppose with Oisin judging before even anything's done, I think it's important. You can throw out opinions and comments, and that's all fine. But at the end of the day, Kevin and his backroom team were picked because they had a better fit to them, and that's just personal choice. If it was Ray Dempsey and Oisin, again, no problem whatsoever. So, I think it's be very unfair to start criticising Kevin at all in terms of he's done nothing yet in terms of players. He's only got into his role now, looking at club games, trying to get a setup right. So, I mean, judge Kevin on the squad next year and how things go. I think it's very unfair to say that it's not a tight backroom team. I know those guys there. They're all great guys. I've worked with them all. So to say that tight would be a bit unfair at this early in the season. And listen, we can talk about star-studded backrooms. You still have to have a backroom that's willing to pull in the same way. So I do fully believe those guys will do a great job. I have no doubt about that. Equally, if Oisin was their way, I don't think there would have been an issue. I think they would have done a great job. But it just, again, I suppose everyone has their opinion on these things. You look at Kerry's setup, that's a pretty star-studded setup, and yet they're all-around champions. So judge them on performance and results rather than early doors.
I think Kevin McStay has set the stall out earlyly as well in terms of relationship with the media. Like, he's probably going to be slightly more open to the I guess the approach that James Horan took. Like, how do you find as a player, does it make any difference to you how open the management and the squad is to the media? Like, it's clearly going to be a different kind of tenure under Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, probably for you, it's probably really frustrating, particularly the last 4 or 5 years where no one's talking about anything. And we're all about promoting our sports and our games, but yet we can't get players and management talking about the game, I suppose. So, I mean, what are you going to learn from a press night from a player? Not very much, to be honest. I mean, I'm pretty open and honest over the last years about football and stuff and how the game is played. I mean, but what does that tell a team? Not really much. You're still going to get the same person or player that's going to come up against you, and you're either going to win your battle or not. So, I mean, yeah, Kevin's in the media and he knows how the media works. I don't really have an issue with it, to be honest. If it helps the game, promotes the game, well then brilliant. If not, then but I think he's probably going to be a bit more open with it. For you guys, it's probably great, and you might get a few more player voices out there.
And that's no harm. I think that's no harm.
But sure, every sport does it. Every sport does it. It's not. I don't think it should be just a GA thing where we all have to go into a closed book. I heard Bernard Brogan say something during the week about, he wants players promoted, but yet even he made himself that they didn't do enough during their time. So, I mean, I have no problem with that. I mean, the pundits and journalists are there for a reason. They need to write backstories about GA, and if they're not writing about it, then who's going to read about it? You're not getting the game out there. So, I mean, it is an important factor to make sure that, as I said, we need to promote our games as best possible we can. So you get your players out there talking about GA. Yeah,
I don't think the Dubs won those All-Irelands because they were boring in interviews. They're unconnected things, really. So long as you don't slag off your next opponent or any opponent at any point, then you're not giving them. But it's okay. The other thing I think is that it makes it less likely that you're going to get idiotic abuse from people if people know you, right? They understand that you are, as you say, there's more to your life than just being a footballer. Most cases, most people will see that that's very reasonable, and they'll find it less easy to go, so and so absolutely rubbish. Maybe that makes no sense, and maybe it doesn't.
No. I know what you mean, but if you're looking at GA or particularly during the pandemic, we no crowds, that was fine. That was the guidance, but yet we don't talk about GA. And you're looking around thinking, is there a game on this weekend? There's very little about it. Even the All-Ireland semi-final last year, Dublin Kerry, there was nothing about it, even the 2-week build-up to it. And yet we're talking about potential full crowd. Sure, no one knew nothing about it. No one knew about teams or how they're feeling or how they're feeling the build-up towards it, how the last game went. So, I mean, even as players, we like to read that kind of thing because we're all normal people. We still have the same experiences during games and pre-game, post-game, leading into a big game. So, I mean, I don't know what you're going to give away that you've done all year. It's not the win and losing a match. It never has been and never will be. I just think we got so tight around the whole media, GA kind of circle. It's become a bit of a farce, to be honest. I don't see the issue with it. So, I mean, unless you guys are going to start writing headlines that about something we never said, but that's not the case. I mean, you play a bit of ball each side as well. So I like to see things a bit more open, less stringent going forward, if I'm being honest. But that's completely down to each team how they feel about it.
Has that, has the issue of abuse online, and we know that a lot of players are on social media and read newspapers and all the rest. Like, we're speaking to Declan Boner recently on the show, the outgoing Donegal manager, and I guess in Donegal they've been keeping the current race for the new manager under fairly tight wraps, and they've said it's probably because they don't want candidates receiving abuse online from anyone. But has that been something that you've noticed in recent years, either increasing or decreasing in terms of abuse directed towards players?
Probably a bit of an increase. Certain guys in our team get quite a lot of abuse, say via Twitter, Instagram. I myself, I don't see a lot. I'm probably not on it too much to care. As I said, I'm a boring old dad. No one wants to see dad jokes or dad photos go up, so they're not that interested. But there has been a bit of a focus on it, and I suppose the important thing is, as a squad and as friends and teammates, is that you make sure you protect them boys as best you can. Probably especially the younger cohort that come in, they might be a bit more naive when it comes to social media and not know the kind of, I suppose, the avenues that they're exploring when it comes to personal abuse. So we try our best to make sure we protect our guys as best possible. But there has been probably a bit more increase, probably since pandemic, because people have more time with screen time. But again, it's across all sports, guys. I mean, it's not something new. It's not just a GA thing. It's probably across all codes. But I just think if you have a strong enough group of guys that in there who have, I suppose, been through it and seen it, and you pass on that bit of knowledge to the guys to make sure they protect themselves, I think then it's not a huge deal. And I don't agree with it, don't get me wrong, but I mean, are you going to stop it? Probably not. But I mean, if you can educate guys quick enough around it and how they use it and how to, I suppose, put content up, then they're not going to be too annoyed, to be honest.
How quickly did the news of Mannion and McCaffrey coming back make it to the Mayo team WhatsApp group?
Very little in the Mayo WhatsApp because we're kicking lumps at each other at the moment. So, so there's not much talking at the moment, guys. That's the problem. But it broke fast. It did break fast. I think the Desi Farrell took a Jim Gavin leaf there. It just slipped it in nicely. To be honest, I think it's great. Again, we're on having the best players playing our game. You have two of the best players that ever played the game. So why wouldn't you be excited for these guys to come back in? I played against them enough to know how good they are and what they can bring and the excitement they bring towards games, championships. So sure, we all know Jack McCaffrey. He's a proper character around the GA world and someone that we all love watching, not because of his absolute outrageous speed, skill, but he seems to like playing football. He has an enjoyment factor about him, and Paul Mannion has been the best club footballer in Dublin for the last 4 years, so that speaks for itself. So it's not it brings that probably a bit more extra dynamic towards how teams are looking at championship next year, and it'll focus a couple of teams more so now, because you've got the two of the best generation players that have come back in Dublin this year.
Well, look, I really hope you are back next season, because it'll be great to see you guys up against them. You definitely put it up to them plenty. So
if I see Jack McCaffrey run of them in the wing, there'll be sore hamstrings at that stage.
Well, hopefully they don't pop between now and then. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Guys, thanks. Cheers. Thank you.
It's Lee Keegan. Always great to have him on the show. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. During the ad break, you're going to hear a clip from the latest episode of Koi Gig. It's the brand new co-host Emma Byrne joining our own Kathleen McNamee and Karen Duggan, of course, as the Chelsea manager Emma Hayes was talked about. The Koi Gig pod on OTB Sports is in association with Cadbury FC, official snack partner to the Republic of Ireland women's national team. We're back with Vinny Perth talking Ireland next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Newspapers have called it the greatest club game ever.
Munster legends Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs are joining forces to bring you all the latest analysis, news, interviews and so much more.
The strength of Munster rugby has always been the big boys up front.
There's a lot of pressure on these guys continuously.
I'm actually really excited for it.
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
There was a good interview with Emma Hayes in The Guardian over the weekend with Donald McRae. Lots of interesting stuff in there about her own personal things that she's gone through over the last few years. You know, how this is probably the first season that she's gone into in 4 years, feeling like mentally refreshed and ready. There's also some really interesting comments about Chelsea itself and also the control of the WSL. I think she's probably one of the first managers to actually come out and properly say, I want the WSL to be taken over by the Premier League. I want it to leave the FA. It's a conversation that's been going on for a good few years, but it was kind of like a little nugget drilled into the article and it wasn't picked up by too many people. And also then her saying that it's her dream job to coach in Spain because she's fluent in Spanish. which I thought was very interesting.
I mean, fluent, I don't know. There's a few mistakes in there. Listen, whatever Emma Hayes says, do it. That's what I say. She's just an incredible person. And you can go to Emma with, questions about football, or you can go to her about questions about your car. She knows everything. She's just unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, if she has a strong opinion about something, it's definitely something you should listen to and think about, because she has done the research.
That's what I mean. She never comes across as unprepared. Like, there's always been a depth of thought gone into all of her interviews. She's so interesting. Even in post-match, she's so just put together and just takes a step back and doesn't rush into anything she says. So she's definitely thought about the pros and cons of that.
If your business relies on a van, that wouldn't sound good. But this does. Get up to 75% off van insurance. Now available in FBD branches nationwide. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. 75% no claims discount based on 5 years claims free. Available on new van policies. Used for farm or business purposes. Terms and conditions apply. Underwritten by FBD Insurance plc. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Celebrate European Week of Sport this September at the Be Active Festival. An action-packed day out for the whole family at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Come and try new sports, fitness challenges and skill tests at Ireland's biggest sporting festival. Meet sporting legends. Check out the Inflatable Zone, Village Food Market and much more. There's something for everyone at the Be Active Festival. Saturday, September 24th at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Book your tickets now at beactivefestival.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, 22 minutes past 8 this morning. If you want to get in touch with us, you can get us on 0879 180 180. That's the WhatsApp number. Or, of course, you can always leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Plenty of comments coming in about the stuff that we were talking about a little bit earlier on, which I'm going to dig out now for you. And this is me filling, by the way. Did you know? Yeah.
Nicely done.
Shouldn't the whole ethos of amateur games and GA is that you should be able to live life and be that good person? Says Shifty that this drinking ban and missing social occasions in case of being accused of enjoyment. The split season is definitely under fire. There's a concerted campaign to stop it. And I can see that's fine. If it doesn't work, you should throw something out. But have we actually lived with it properly just yet? Yeah. We're not finished the first full season of it. We don't know what the impact is going to be. The club games are going to start getting better. Unfortunately, there's too many defensive-minded Gaelic football managers out there, and so the games haven't been as enjoyable because, the quality of the defence, the quality of the forwards is not good. You have absolute full-time amateurs playing, and the games are televised, and so that brings a lot of scrutiny to them. So, listening to Lee Keegan saying there's an opportunity for us to have a life, you might get players playing into their mid-30s again as opposed to retiring at 27, 28, 29.
Yeah, we'll get to see some of the best players for longer, probably because of the split season. And that's something I hadn't really considered, the fact that these lads can go and have the few beers with their mates, go on holidays with their friends or their other halves, go to weddings and literally enjoy themselves. No, obviously Mayo were helped by the fact that they went out of the championship slightly earlier, but it's not really that big a difference. Even Galway and Kerry's footballers would have had the chance to maybe experience life a little bit more this year. And I actually think none of the people against the split season are proper club people and club fans, because I think there has been a bit more of a sparkle around the club season this year. Even when I went down to Galway recently for a cousin's 30th and was at the cousin's house, and uncle-in-law was telling me about a couple of games that were in Pearse Stadium that afternoon. I said, geez, I might call down to that. And you just pay your $5 in or whatever to a double header. You get to see Paul Conroy, Desi Keneally, rake of the Galway footballers at club level, playing for their clubs and enjoying it. And it's so easily accessible. And the Dublin Championship is obviously gone to the next level in terms of competitiveness. In Monaghan as well, you're getting some cracking games at the minute. County players littered all over the pitches, and that wouldn't possibly have taken such a centre fold and a main story attraction if the inter-county season had maybe been what it was. So I think from a club perspective, the split season is a good thing, and clearly we should just be listening to the players, because my opinion doesn't really matter. Lee Keegan's opinion does. and the fact that he likes it and enjoys it is testament to it, probably.
Yeah, and I think the club players' voice, obviously, the CPA disappeared because they got their split season, but there still probably needs to be somebody who's like taking soundings from them saying, did you like the ability that you had this year to have plans and go on holiday with your family and attend family weddings and maybe set your own wedding to a date that actually your friends are going to be able to come to?
Yeah.
Or actually enjoy, because you're not, 8 weeks from championship, lads, no drinking. Which the other,
Well, that's probably Shefty Lads' point, is the drinking bans, which is another topic altogether, and something that the GAA probably does need to take a look at. But then it's down to each individual manager.
I mean, it's our troubled relationship with alcohol generally as a race might be more important there. To go back to the minimum age thing, or Tony Kay says, why not have a minimum age of 17 or 18? That way you can look out for player welfare and mental health. It would also spark more interest in underage football divisions. I think the ship has sailed in underage football divisions, really, because of the beast that is the Premier League. Mairead Weaver says, read No Hunger in Paradise by Michael Calvin to understand the devastation caused to young players when they're told they're the next big thing and then mercilessly dumped from a club. Isolt on Twitter says, really well said. Performance age and maturity to deal with all that comes with the former are often very different. All you need to do is read Calvin's book No Hunger in Paradise to understand the dangers to young footballers thrust into the spotlight too soon. So a couple of separate recommendations for his book. I haven't read the book. I heard the interview that he did around the time that it came out, but you just know from like every sport, next big thing, phenom, absolutely sensational, pressure, something goes wrong, an injury, disaffection, never plays again. You're like, well, that's a story. Maybe we should learn from this story. No, let's do it again. Next big 15-year-old, let's go. What's going to happen to Aaron Connolly? I don't know what's going to happen to Aaron Connolly, but was it too much too soon? And we would have been like absolutely guilty of like, put him in the team. And it's only at some point when you sit back and go, that was the wrong thing to do, was to call for him to be put in the team.
Yeah, but the media certainly has to take some blunt of the blame as well, because how often do you hear the phrase the next Messi or the next Ronaldo thrown about in football terms? Like it's just scandalous how often it's used, and it's overused. But like, these young players, just they don't have the capability of dealing with phrases like that, being told that they're the next. They haven't had unless they have good experienced younger players around them. Younger players, especially this generation, are on their phones all the time. We know that dressing rooms have changed, and even Premier League dressing rooms have iPhones everywhere, whereas back 20-30 years ago that just wasn't the case. So now they're being accustomed to reading things and seeing things online and reading pressure and probably Googling their own name and Twitter searching their own name naturally enough. So I don't know, the sports psychology element is massively important, and I know in underage academies that's probably something that's been taken seriously now in
yeah, but that sports psychology is all around performance. It's not around like being a good human being and understanding how to deal with.
There should be a therapist / counsellor element to it as well.
There should, yeah, and I'm sure they have the money to do that, and there should. It still strikes me that 15-year-old is like, what are you doing?
Yeah, but then the texter who suggested a minimum age, like the problem is, where do you wouldn't have had the Wayne Rooney goal past David Seaman if the minimum age was 17 or 18. That's me talking from a greedy point of view. Obviously the welfare of the player comes first, but I just don't know what the minimum age is for a player, because as I said before, it is a case by case basis. Some players are ready at 16 and some players aren't emotionally ready at 19. So it's,
but again, right, so Wayne Rooney scored that goal. Would Wayne Rooney have ended up being the greatest goal scoring phenom of all time if he had another year of learning to deal with stuff?
I don't think so.
Well, you don't know. You don't know.
You don't know either way, but I just think he was thrust into the limelight because of his unbelievable talent. Obviously Everton putting him into the team and taking him off the bench that day was one aspect to it, but scoring a 30-yard screamer
he was 5 days short of his 17th birthday.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so there you go. He was close enough.
I don't know, maybe an extra week wouldn't have made any difference.
Ethan Manieri, this Arsenal player, is nowhere near 16. I think he's 15 years and 100 and something days. So he's not even close to 16. Yeah. So there's a big gap there even.
Okay. Right, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Remember, don't miss our exclusive panel with Leona Maguire and Katrina Matthews live from Dromoland Castle this evening. It's all in association with the KPMG Women's Irish Open, which obviously starts tomorrow. It's time for the sports pages.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse.
I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
Ah, no, Eamon, come on, don't be, no, I'm not,
Yes.
no.
Back page of the Irish Daily Mail. We've already spoken about this. It's McConville, Mayo, Backroom, egos spell trouble. So he was speaking on the GA Social podcast, the BBC's podcast. I think Ray Dempsey would have been a better choice for Mayo, genuinely. I found Ray Dempsey very direct, very honest. I don't think there are enough of those people around anymore. Sorry. Because he was obviously part of it, especially in management, and I think he would have been a good fit for them because I think that's exactly what Mayo need. So I don't know who else was part of that backroom team. It was definitely Oisin and
Aidan O'Rourke maybe was another member of it, I think.
I mean, they're all very accomplished. None of them are shrinking violets.
Yeah.
I don't expect Oisin to be in the change rooms going, no, you're right, Ray.
Eamon O'Hara's name is coming into my head. Don't quote me on that, but to memory, it was a very decent backroom team also. Oisin's it was a sliding doors moment for him, because if Ray Dempsey had got the job and Oisin was part of the backroom team, he wouldn't now be the Wicklow senior football manager. So it's interesting to see what he does there, but very, very open and honest from Oisin. He's never shied back, as Leo
that's why we love him. He's great.
Yeah. And I think Rian O'Neill was the guest on the podcast itself. And
Declan O'Keefe, former Kerry goalkeeper, Enda Galvari, Keith Higgins and James Burke.
Sorry, right, I was thinking of a different backroom team myself. Yeah, not as quite as star-studded as Kevin McStay's. But
but Oisin would have been also involved. And then there was a suggestion that Kevin O'Neill and Terry Kennedy might be involved, as could Daniel Kilgallen, who of course is the sprint coach for Ireland's fastest ever sprinters.
Yeah.
Do you know? Kevin O'Neill, really interesting character. You know, look, I'm not saying that Oisin's wrong. I just think that Oisin's wrong.
I don't think egos in a backroom team is really an issue. They know what they're getting into by signing up for that. Like Stephen Rochford was in the backroom team at Donegal. He's stepping into a very similar role now with Mayo. They all have their own individual roles. Like Liam McHale is liaison, I think, to the under-20s. They've got other people in there, liaison to the club teams as well. So I mean, they've obviously thought this through. And look, Oisin obviously would have preferred for Ray Dempsey to get the job, but
or maybe not. Maybe there's a sliding doors moment, and he actually takes to inter-county management like a duck to water and decides, and then he's in his hat's in the ring whenever Geezer goes.
Well, by all accounts, he's currently managing Enniskeane at club level in Monaghan, and they'd be a small enough parish. Like they'd be, they obviously have the stadium where different Monaghan club league games are held. Patrick Cavan, the country.
I was going to say there's a dance at Billy Brown's barn.
Of course, but they're a small enough club. But they're into the senior championship semi-final now for yet another year. So he's taken them to a different level. So he's a good manager, Oisin.
Revealed how Taekwondo bribed way into the Olympics. This is a Matt Lawton exclusive this morning on the London Times. Whistleblower says cars and cash were used to get martial art into the Sydney Games. The election was rigged with 500 grand in payments. Olympic boxing medals traded for bribes. So Taekwondo wasn't in the Olympics and then was in the Olympics, and then how does something like that happen? How do you get your sport into the Olympics? Money fixes everything.
And turns out money buys medals as well.
I haven't read this piece yet. I didn't get a chance to this morning. You had a look at it.
Yeah, I think one of the figures I'd read, I think was it Azerbaijan paid maybe 10 million for an Olympic medal in boxing at one point. This guy essentially, the name is on the piece there.
Kim.
He's essentially been diagnosed with cancer and has decided I might die, and I need to get these things off my chest, which he is doing largely, and I sat down with Matt Lawton for a fairly in-depth piece, and has just let fly at everything. He says he was a delivery guy for some of these bribes. He's holding his hands up. It's almost a mea culpa from his behalf, but really throwing a lot of people and countries and organisations under the bus. So yeah, it's really, really fascinating stuff. Probably no surprise to many of us that there's a little bit of corruption in certain levels, but to see the figures involved and to see the actual fact that there have been medals at World Championship and Olympic level literally purchased is quite a terrifying thought, and really puts a dark stain on the Olympic Games.
Kenny's a name dropper is tab of the morning to you. Scotland versus Ireland. Stephen not afraid to act star players for Scotland. Stephen Kenny has insisted he's no qualms about dropping anyone as Seamus Coleman and Shane Duffy sweat on their places. So Duffy was in Nathan's team. Coleman wasn't. I think he's going to pick Coleman.
You think he's going to pick Coleman?
I do think he's going to pick Coleman.
I have a feeling Coleman's going to be left out.
Vinny Perth's on his way in, and we'll see. Do you have any information?
No, I just like, I feel like Doherty and McLean are guaranteed as the wing backs, and then you've got Nathan Collins and John Egan guaranteed. So Collins can quite easily go to the right of that 3. Egan can quite easily go to the left of that 3. And Shane Duffy probably fits the bill in the middle. I'd probably put Darragh O'Shea in there myself, but I feel like he's going to pick Shane Duffy. I just have a feeling that Coleman's lack of game time, and the argument's going to start. Where does game time come in versus what you've done in recent international windows? But I have a feeling Coleman might not play.
Okay, Scott's love affair with the game stands test of time is the James McDermott piece. Picture there of Stephen Kenny facing the old dilemma of form versus reputation. Scotland's reputation in world football, as they say there, 3 of soccer's greatest managers, Steen, Busby and Shankly, were born within 30 miles of each other. They've done all right, those boys. We've got some hope is the headline on Paul Lennon's piece in The Star. Stephen Kenny hopes Ukraine can beat Scotland tonight to boost Ireland's hopes of a Nations League group runners-up spot and their Euro 2024 ambitions. Ten Hag is out of the Klopp drawer. This is Bruno Fernandes' piece that he's done, where he's very impressed so far by Ten Hag, and we already talked about Nathan Dier. Split season and own goal, says Pat Spillane. He's down at the Ploughing, and he's given an interview saying, giving the opposition a chance, the opposition being other sports. I'm completely against the split season. We've taken our 2 best products, inter-county hurling and football, and taken them off the shop window for 9 months. Is it 9 months? Like February, March, April, May, June, July. That seems more than 3.
It does.
When you take your best product out of the shop window for 9 months, you give the opposition a chance. Maybe we're not going to go as far as the 3rd Sunday in September to play an All-Ireland final, but at least take back the month of August. I think there's a happy medium here where they take back a little bit longer as well. There's a story here about Qatar failing to reform World Cup stadium workers still toil in debt and squalor. The Qatar World Cup is going to be one of those things you look back on in 30 years and go, why was that allowed to happen? And it's the same story as Taekwondo in 2000 in Sydney.
Yeah.
Money made it happen, and it's pretty grotesque. And at the same time, the papers are like, oh, Leo Messi might win a World Cup finally. And
I mean, Pete Patterson for The Guardian writing there, he's been in Qatar for 9 years, and he says the scenes he saw at those camps are the worst he's seen.
Right.
Like these guys are
getting worse.
Yeah, a pound per hour. They're sending home 160 quid a month, I think, to their family. So, and then there's obviously the illegal agent fees to secure these jobs in the first place. So there's a lot of
it's basically human trafficking.
Terrible things happening. Yeah.
No one is safe. Kenny warns, I'm the manager and will drop anyone that I have to from the team. Right, John Duggan is with us. John, good morning to you.
Ger and Shane, how are we doing?
How are you getting on?
Not too bad, thanks yourselves.
I was like, there's 2 footballers in the front of the paper at the Ploughing, and it's Ray Houghton and some young fella. It's like, who is it? Is it? It's one of those lads from West Ham, that team that had it's Toto Schillaci.
Right.
He looks amazing. Toto Schillaci looks like a young fella. Doesn't really look like Toto Schillaci anymore.
Jeez, yeah.
I haven't seen him since the Smithwick's ad, which you did a few years ago.
Hold it up there. I don't know if we can see Toto's little face in there. Probably not. He does look remarkably young.
It's funny because he just caught lightning in a bottle in that tournament.
Yeah, he's
Toto Schillaci.
His name gives us
he was never really the same before or after in terms of reaching the heights of football. And obviously went all so wrong in Naples with Maradona.
Sorry, I missed that bit. Go again.
I just said Toto Schillaci never really hit the heights as a player before or after that World Cup.
No, like a 6-week period where he was like the most devastating striker in the world, and now he's doing the Ploughing. He's down in Kildare.
Well, that's it. There's always hope.
I mean, look, the Ploughing is amazing. If you haven't had the chance to go to the Ploughing, we used to get a day off school for it, not officially, to go to the Ploughing. It was sensational, and I look forward to this show coming to you hopefully live from the Ploughing next year.
Is it like a farmer's Oktoberfest or something?
I'd say, yeah. I mean, it's Electric Picnic for farmers.
It's Ratheniska. It's literally right beside Electric Picnic as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Same locale. It's someone on Twitter pointing out it's the Gareth Brooks for Culchies, except it's also for Culchies. Culchies are taken out.
Yeah.
Last couple of weeks, you've got Gareth Brooks and notice how I said you, not we.
Well, that's proper.
Proper, of course, because I'm a Toney from back home in Monaghan. I wouldn't be classed as a culture necessarily, although the Dubs would have me in a different category.
You're a pure Garth Brooks country.
It was Ger, actually, the only man in this room, John, that's been to Garth Brooks.
Okay. Did you not go, John? No?
No, it's completely over my head, lads. It doesn't make any sense to me, this Garth Brooks.
Any country music, John?
Nah, not at all.
None?
No, I wouldn't mind going to Nashville just to see it. But
Willie Nelson, the Highwaymen?
Nah, it's all over my head, lads.
Really?
I'm from the Pale,
That doesn't mean you're...
I'm more geared towards Depeche Mode or something like that, or something else. No.
Bangin' O'Donnell?
Not at all. Not at all. Each their own, I respect it all. Everybody's entitled to their culture, but it's not mine.
I'd say John would pull off a pair of brown shoes and...
I pull off shoes, all right.
Cut jeans.
It's more white spats that I used to wear when I used to go out, but not country now. No.
And have you retired the spats?
Yeah, they just kind of wore. Yeah, they have retired. They have been retired. But I need to go back and do a bit of that. I've always wanted kind of white crocodile skin shoes, or snake skin. So I need to kind of get back into that vogue. I used to be the Imelda Marcos of my era about 20 years ago. I used to buy all these kind of expensive shoes. I got a gold credit card when I was about 20 or something, and it all went to my head.
They'd be worth a fortune now.
Well, the theme in the morning is like too much too soon.
Well, that's it. Too much too young, as the special said.
There's a country music festival held in Monaghan every July. I think we should, I'm going to make the call out right now, we should do a OB, forget about the ploughing, we should do an OB from the country music festival.
We can do both.
Great fun, a lot of fun. I think we'd have a great time.
You'll be frying steak, Shane?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I'll put you up in the gaff as well in Monaghan.
It'd be tired and emotional every day, but it'd be good shows.
Yeah. Monaghan's finest brew, like in the moonshine and everything.
It's 8:41.
Yeah.
That is this. Unless you want to do the papers, we're going to move on to Virtual Insanity. That's the papers.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse.
I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
No, Eamon, come on, don't be. No, I'm not.
Yes.
No.
It's time now for Virtual Insanity.
You have entered Power Drive.
Right. The French Open, Open de France, Le Golf National. It starts at 6:50 tomorrow morning because the President's Cup is going on across the pond in the Atlantic. So therefore, we're going to concentrate on the DP World Tour event this week. This is with the Ryder Cup course, wasn't it? 2018 Mollywood. You might remember Mollywood, Tommy Fleetwood and Francesco Molinari taking the Americans to the cleaners. So it's a tight course. It's an accurate, favours accurate players. This course, a lot of water hazards, a lot of deep rough. So you want to be, going with strategy players. I picked 5. These are on OTBSports.com on the OTB app. Profit is €333 for the year, 33.3% profit. Right. Rasmus Højgaard from Denmark is the headline tip at 28-1 for 4 each way. Now, this is about strategy, and there are other strategy players in my thing, but the class acts are what you got to look at as well, because this field is not that strong, and Rasmus Højgaard is a real talent. He's only 21 years of age. He's already won 3 times on the European Tour. He was shot a 66 in Rome at the weekend in the final round. He was in the top 20 at Wentworth. He does bomb it. He's going to have to temper that, but he does hit a lot of greens, and he's so talented, Rasmus Højgaard. I'm just going to go for the class act as my headline tip this week for the Denmark's Rasmus Højgaard for 28-1. Victor Perez is the home favourite of all the French players who could win this. I think he's the one at 18-1 for 3 each way. Once again, 4 rounds under par last week initially, was third, won the Dutch Open earlier this year. Was a really promising player about 3 or 4 years ago, but kind of lost his form. But Victor Perez is a fairways and greens guy, and he's back in form now, and he's a very solid, I think, each way proposition. The third one is a guy I've been kind of looking at because he plays well on tough courses, which this is Holland's Vil Besseling. So he's 100-1 for 3 each way. Played really well first 2 rounds of the US Open, was second to the European Open on a tough course in Hamburg earlier this year. Has never won, has never turned up at Le Golf National, but I just do think he is a good guy off the tee, and I think that's what you need this week. Vil Besseling might surprise at 100-1. The fourth one is Søren Kjeldsen, former Irish Open winner, at 125-1 for 2 each way. Shot 64 in the second round at Wentworth, was tied 5th there, so he's playing well. I was going through back to 1998. He's got 10 top 20 finishes in this tournament at this course. and 3 of those inside the top 10. So he likes the course. He's a strategy guy. He's 47 now. He's playing well. He could be a guy that could be one of the better outsiders, Søren Kjeldsen. And the last one, a bit of a sentimental one, at 100 to 1 for €1.50 each way. Mike Lorenzo Vera, the guy's been taking it to Live Golf all year, been calling them out at his home course where he's been tied 3rd and tied 6th in the past. His form has really dipped since the pandemic kind of disrupted everything. But if he can find some magic on his home turf with his fans around him, Mike Lorenzo Vera could surprise. So Mike Lorenzo Vera, Søren Kjeldsen, Vil Besseling, these are the guys around the 100 mark. Then we have second Victor Perez, a solid guy who's in form, and the headline tip guys. Rasmus Højgaard from Denmark at 28 to 1. In the French Open, starts tomorrow over Sunday.
Very good. That's this week's episode of Virtual Insanity.
You have entered Power Drive.
Two comments side by side. Sean Ryder says the only people to live up to the underage hype: LeBron, Joe Canning and David Clifford. Not the only people. Shane Hannon has also lived up to the underage hype. Tennis Tank says keep Shane on every morning. Well, we are going to do that. Out of respect for the Queen, we had to wait until everything was over, but we couldn't wait any longer. Shane, congratulations. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Glad to be on board. Glad to be on board. No pressure.
Monaghan's finest,
No
Shane
pressure.
Hannon.
No pressure. The King is dead. The King is dead. Long live the King.
Yeah, I was going to wear a black suit for the occasion, but forgot this morning what t-shirt it is. Your job now is to get behind your new manager. We should probably get Owen to record that line, given that he's the
He did say it on the way out
situation.
just before he broke into tears, but we didn't get that on camera because we were being kind to him.
He did, yeah. Everyone in Monaghan will be happy. We needed more Monaghan accents, I think.
Barney Army.
So yeah, delighted. A new dawn and a new era on OTB AM of Monaghan and Green Diesel anecdotes galore.
Just don't tell the Spa story ever again, please.
No, never again. There'll be the odd, possibly GMAC impression. You'd imagine.
Was he at a Grand Prix? Was he? I never heard about it.
Don't bring this up,
It's
please.
driving me to cold beers, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. But I didn't think that we would have a person in place before Monaghan would have a manager in place, given Monaghan got rid of Banty a long time ago, it feels. But
This is the kick up the hole they need, Shane.
Yeah, 100%. So
we've got our finger out before them. So
OTB acted first.
It's 8:47 this morning. If you want to get in touch with us, 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Of course, you can leave a comment for us in the YouTube stream, and we're brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish today. Vinny Perth's going to join us next. First, here's Chidozie Ogbene talking ahead of the Scotland game.
Well, I'm hoping for 6 points. Most importantly, I think we just need to, I think we want to rectify the Amina result because it was a frustrating away day. And just display what we displayed in the Aviva against Scotland, and hopefully, we get the 6 points and leave the rest of the football in that. Well, firstly, I am happy to bet, but when you come to international level, no one's guaranteed positions. You have to fight, every day of your life to get a position in this team, and you see players come and go, and I'm quite fortunate I've been called the times I've been called, and that's why you come here, and I enjoy the occasion. I see the kind of players we have here, and I'm trying to learn off them to take it back to my club. But when I come here, I try to work twice as hard to get a jersey, to even be in the squad first of all. So I know what it takes, and that's why I continue. But I'm quite blessed. The coaches, they continue to feed information in me, to me to help me improve my game. So that's what I'm going to do. I've stayed relaxed really. I try not to get too high when things are going well, and try not to get too low when things are going badly. So these things are going to happen, but I think the people I have around me is quite good. I think not starting against Scotland, the boys got the result, and that's the main important. That's the most important thing. And to watch it from the sidelines, and to watch the clips and see what like players like Michael were doing different than I would have done different. To see if we can learn from each other. And we're all here to to achieve one goal, to win games. So it doesn't really matter who's on the pitch. Obviously, you push to be on the pitch, but once again, the result is always good for everybody.
Yeah, Chidozie Ogbene making a lot of sense in the press conference yesterday. Vinny Perth is with us. Vinny, good morning to you.
Morning. How are you all doing?
This is it's an important window because the last window started disastrously, improved slightly, and then finished rapturously. So,
Yeah, no, I think at this stage every window's important, and we're going through this cycle of after bad performances, a lot of noise around the team, and good performances, a lot of praise. So we're still in that cycle, I feel, and it is a difficult window in many ways because the Scotland game will be a tough game, absolutely tough game. So it's I suppose that's the gig, isn't it? Do you have to live with it?
It is the gig, and it looks like we're getting towards a settled team, or at least it did look like we were getting towards a settled team, because the team that beat Scotland 3-0 at home played really well. But there's probably going to be some changes. Yeah,
and I think this is like, it's something I've heard discussed at different stages. I think it's so important that, and I often reference it here, that we don't really see, or the average fan doesn't really see Championship football that much, and so much of our team is based out of Championship football, so form is huge coming into windows, and I think Stephen has to pick the team on form, but he also has to be loyal at certain occasions, and there's just no hard, I imagine there's no rules on, you know, in terms of how you pick a player, because you have to be loyal to some people and you have to understand the makeup of your team, but at the same time you can't ignore people's form, and you look at Chiedozi's form recently, we would have said maybe he wouldn't be in the starting team, but you have to say on form he deserves to be in the team. So that's sort of where we're at as a nation. He's been great coming off the bench for Ireland, and then when he started games he hasn't been quite as effective. And look, that's fairly natural when you're very early in your international career, that it's a different scenario. So does Kenny in some ways think, actually I'm going to leave him in reserve, or does he go, actually you're in form, I want you to score early here? Yeah, well, I think the key to it is some people who, I suppose the pro Kenny gangs would have been saying, we've done a huge amount of heavy lifting of building a squad. So the key is we have options now, I would say, and I think you could have, there's probably 4 or 5 arguments around the team, who will play, who won't play, which is a good position to be in. We're probably missing, I would say, a Gareth Bale, a Robbie Keane, a star that takes us to major championships. But at the same time, we've built a team. There's a lot of players playing at a really good level. We all talk about Premiership, but if Championship's at decent level, you look at someone like Darragh O'Shea playing regularly for West Brom. I've often, people would say, oh dude, these lads need a move, they've just been relegated. Sometimes, particularly when you're young, to be playing week in, week out at a really high level will help. I think we've got a lot of players in that window, albeit when you look at Scotland, I think they've got maybe 10 players that are in the Premiership as well. So we are playing. So we are a little behind, and we'd like players playing at a high level, but I think the transition is starting to happen. I feel we're on the cusp of something.
Okay. I was really interested in reading, was it Damien Delaney in the Sunday World, I think, at the weekend, where he's kind of talking about he's surprised at how much backing Stephen Kenny has got, and he was kind of pointing towards the qualifiers next March as maybe a period where, if those games are lost, then another referendum has to be on Kenny. Like, is it just an Irish thing now that after every single game or a window we seem to have this referendum on Kenny, even though he signed the contract? Yeah, I think it's sport in general nowadays. I think people used to sit around the table and work and have a chat about the match the night before. Now it's on social media, now it's out there, it's in the world we live in. I think that's just the world we live in now. But at the same time, it is probably the biggest gig in Irish sport. It's the most participated sport, so therefore what comes with that is huge pressure. So I mean, the answer to Damien's probably right. If we lose 2 or 3 games, there will be huge discussions, because I think, whatever about World Cup, I think we've got to be close to qualifying for European Championships, or at least missing out by a bit of bad luck at the end of the day. So I think, and I think the Nation League will help us get to that in terms of the playoffs, maybe. So it's you would feel that it's almost harder not to qualify for European Championships nowadays, in terms of they set up so many different ways and so many teams qualify. So there is pressure with that job, and I think Stephen accepts that, to be fair. Let's look at the team that you've picked. Is this the team you think he will pick, or is this the team that you would pick? No, it's so difficult, because I mean, you could pick 3 or 4 teams. I'm just looking at form and trying to learn from what went in the previous games, and I'm trying to get inside of Stephen's head a little bit and saying, so therefore
I'm putting myself out there. This could change, and I didn't know him as well as I think I do. But this is something I feel.
Before I name the team, sorry, here's my question. Right, you've talked about the championship, and obviously Kenny's looking at the highlights and the Wisecout of every minute of every performance, and his team are doing that. How important is the actual training sessions in the week of the game in terms of selection?
So 2 points. One is on championship and form, and like he goes to a lot of games. So just to not to go off, not answer your question. About a month ago, I went to the UK for a couple of days. I was actually in Fleetwood and watching them train, how things done, club visit, and I ended up going down to watch Birmingham against Huddersfield. And for the average Irish fan, which I would be, or we'd all be, Scott Hogan hasn't done that much for Ireland. He hasn't looked sharp, and when he's got his chance, hasn't really taken it. But I remember watching him going, wow, this guy's a good player. And I actually we undervalue him because I've been to see him live, I've watched his movements, and since then I've watched a couple more of the Birmingham games. He got a hat-trick recently. He's in really good form, but for an Irish fan turning up, if Scott Hogan happens to get onto the team sheet, we're going to be going, wow, where's this come from?
Yeah.
But the manager, his staff, Keith, they'll have been to Scott Hogan's. Like the night I was there, Keith was actually watching the game as well. He was in the stadium. So the point I'm making is we have to be careful how we view teams and pick teams, and we've got to understand that these are doing their job week in, week out.
If you miss a chance for Ireland in the last 4 or 5 games, we remember that.
Yes.
Whereas actually what they've seen is like the development and evolution and fitness and the markers and all that stuff.
And again, and it's and stop me if I'm going overboard, but Birmingham play a similar way to Ireland, okay? So therefore Scott Hogan is playing in a sort of similar system as an Ireland, and his movement across the front post is probably better than most strikers we have in terms of his movement. So it's just a point to say. So if Scott Hogan is under new management, he's really fit at the moment. If he comes in and trains this week and trains brilliantly, you've got Keith watching him live, you've got Stephen watching him live, Stephen Rice has probably watched him live. Well then, there is an opportunity for someone like Scott Hogan to jump the queue and say, I've got to play someone in form. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's how these things all play out for an Irish side.
Yeah, because I wouldn't say we were surprised that he was in the squad, but listening to you now, it makes more sense that, and it will make more sense if he gets some game time, some meaningful game time, which he probably will over the 2 games.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility. Look, we've got strong options there, whether it's Ogbenya or Obafemi, like between the two of them. You've also got Callum Robinson, Troy Parrott. Again, I heard someone say he's not playing that well. Someone who knows the game of football, he's not that playing well. He hasn't scored goals. He's been exceptional for Preston.
Has he?
Yes, he really has.
Okay, because we haven't heard this, really, because none of us are watching Preston week in, week out, or
of course we're not. And again, I've seen Preston live, and I was really impressed with him. And I think. Preston aren't scoring goals. I think we all know that. But he's been really, really good, and a couple of goals would have transformed people's opinion of him. But from a form point of view, I think he's really good at the moment and playing really well. So
okay, let's name your team then. So Bazunas and goals.
Again, I'm trying to get into Stephen's head a little bit, but Darragh O'Shea, Egan, and Collins is a back 3. Again, that could change, but I just think on form, I think it would have been really interesting if Omar Bamadeli had been fit, because again, himself, he's in excellent form for Norwich. That would have given Stephen a real sort of decision to make. But again, it could easily be Shane Duffy, and again, you could split hairs whether Egan plays and Collins, because you've got to get the balance right. Collins plays that central role really well of a back 3, but. That's my gut feeling he'll go with again. It could be Seamus Coleman in the back 3 or Shane Duffy. So we've got real options. Probably O'Shea. I think Nathan Collins and Egan are certs.
Okay.
It's who comes in, and I think.
And does the balance of the back 3 get affected?
Well, to be fair, Duffy can't really play the right of a 3. He has played there. Duffy would have to be the centre one. Probably the problem when Shane plays there is the quality of passing isn't as good as other players. So if you're going to play 3, you'd like to play out from the back. But Nathan Collins or Egan can play on the sort of left of the tree, no problem, and Seamus Coleman on the right of it. If Seamus plays there, it's almost like, and I keep using the Chelsea thing, it's almost like if you see Aspilicueta breaking out of that Chelsea back three. I think Seamus can do that to a point.
So where does Nathan Collins play in the three? If it's Collins, Egan and O'Shea, who's left, centre and right?
Yeah, it's I know Egan can play in the right, and that's the decision. That's about the balance, and that's where this one confused me a little bit. I spent a bit of time on the back three, not 100% sure, because you prefer Nathan Collins in the centre of it. I think that's where he's got his real quality, but Egan is probably more likely to be the centre one, I'd say. But you're splitting hairs there in terms of who plays.
And O'Shea's on the left.
O'Shea be more, I would say, operate off the left of it.
Is James McLean now first choice left wing back?
It looks like it. I mean, I think the other option there is Robbie Brady. I know we do have Matt Doherty could play there, but I think James McLean, particularly away from home, it's James is fascinating, isn't he? Like, people give out about him, then he comes in and does brilliantly, and he's like, well, we need James McLean, we need him. So it's difficult.
96 caps.
Yeah, no,
it's an incredible career,
and by all accounts a great person around the change rooms, the squad. And look, I don't think you need to question anything about James and his desire. It's sometimes there is a lack of quality at times, and his crosses sometimes let him down, but I think away from home this will be a difficult tie. So again, you could see, I mean we had the debate not that long ago about whether Doherty play left wing back, could be, and Seamus Coleman right wing back. The one that misses out on this, and I think is really unlucky, is Alan Brown. In those last two games was excellent, and I'm a real Alan Brown fan. Again, plays week in week out with Preston, and Alan Brown is a goal threat. We haven't have goals in our team. So it's really harsh on Alan Brown.
I was thinking Coleman in the team because I just think I think he will pick Coleman because of the experience and but I don't know. But like, Doherty played really well at left wing back, so there is room for Doherty to take McLean's place and Alan Brown to be rewarded for his form for Ireland.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, but it's sometimes you're looking for that balance of left and right footers, and O'Shea will play if O'Shea starts, for argument's sake. It's great sometimes if a right footer plays in the left, because it opens the whole pitch up for a team. So you can't have all. You're looking for a bit of balance, and again, trying to get in his head is, again, it could be wrong.
Does any weight have to be put on the previous Scotland game? Like, looking at the team that day, obviously you had Brown and McLean as the wing backs. You had Collins, Duffy, Egan that day as the three. Like, kept a clean sheet, played well. Should any weight? I know the game is back in June, but should you put any weight on the fact that they played well against Scotland?
Well, I suppose like the obvious answer is yes. So why change the team? Should the team we played won 3-0? But again, it goes back to form. It goes back to who's in really good form. If you look at our midfield three, like of Malumbi came into the team, gave us huge energy that day. Jason Knight obviously gave us real running power, and I think we need that in that midfield. I think we've seen a slight tactical change where we sort of went to that midfield three, I'm going to call it, but we probably needed that. In the first two games we weren't that good in that last window, and we got something out of the Scotland game. Again, I think you have to, and that's why I wouldn't be surprised if you went with the same front two as that day. But again, I'm saying Jadosi's form is that good. I presume he's going to pick him. Presume he's going to pick him.
And yet, if it's Parrott and Hogan, if it's Parrott and Ó Dufaigh, like, Ó Dufaigh would be a bit of a wild card given his club situation, but
yeah, he hasn't played a lot of football in the last month. It's been 2 minutes, and then beyond that, it's been about 4 or 5 weeks. So it's almost like when calls are so tight as a manager, sometimes if you have an excuse, it's great. You know, it's almost like it's not that you're going to admit to you're not really playing at the moment, so that sometimes can tip it one way or the other. And I think we're at real judgment calls here in terms of the team. It's not like we're debating whether a star should play ahead of up and coming. I think a lot of our players are sort of so evenly matched. It's about finding the balance and who's on form. And I've said about 10 times now, but form at the moment coming into this window, I think overrides some of the performance against Scotland.
Whatever about people not seeing much of the Championship, not that many people seeing that much of League One, and Knight we hoped would get a move. I I don't know what his contractual situation is, but I think he's up at the end of the year.
End of this year, yeah.
Yeah, and so like, look, whatever you do, whoever his advisors are, don't sign anything yet.
No.
Just let's wait and see exactly how well the rest of the season goes, and then you'll have hopefully your choice. Is he doing well at the moment? He actually played second striker according to Transfer Market in the last game, but he'd been right back or right wing back.
He's been right back, or they've started as a wing back, and then he ended up in a back four.
Right.
He's done quite well in that position. I don't think and that's where there's no hard and fast rules. I think Robbie Brady is going to be considered as probably left back option or left wing back option,
right?
And not a midfielder, because of he's playing there week in, week out at the moment, Robbie Brady is. But I think with Jason Knight, I think we need his, if you remember that position that, say, Jamie McGrath played away in Portugal, I think we need that running power from Jason Knight. Therefore, I think he play in midfield. Has he done well? He's done quite well. Again, we look at these young players with Irish eyes. He was available for the whole championship to sign. 1 year left in his contract. Could have got him out Derby, imagine, for small money. So people in English football are probably still watching him at the moment, saying, what is he, where is he, and where is he at? So I think the next sort of, obviously there's no doubt about it, the next couple of months are crucial. I think the international football will help him in terms of getting his next club or wherever that may be. But he's done okay. He's played quite well.
He's playing is the main thing.
He's playing,
well.
And again, You could sign for a club, a Middlesbrough for argument's sake, and
be off the bench.
And I think at that young age, we need to do this as well. We need to be patient with these guys and say, we've someone like, I go back to Darragh O'Shea, he's gone ahead, I don't know the figures, but he's gone ahead into, maybe 24, 25, a couple of 100 league appearances under his belt. There's guys coming out under 23 squads in City, Liverpool, Manchester, all haven't played. Yeah. And I think that's crucial for us. So we need to be patient with this group.
Well, let's talk about the patience, because Malumbi, I think, is somebody who came in the team, played okay, played badly for a while, lost his place at the club, got a move, playing football, playing great, full of confidence. Like, that's been the kind of, it hasn't been a straight line for him at all.
Yeah, but who would have thought young players would have ups and downs, like, and we've jumped on all these young players from the 21s, and we had to be patient. And again, just a point of note, and I'd put Malumbi in, but I wouldn't be shocked if Jeff Hendrick starts. I wouldn't be. Stephen generally picks him when he's fit, and he's back playing now to a point.
Well, that's the thing. He dropped him for the Scotland game for the third in the 3 window the last time. Malumbi came in. He did come off the bench, but he wasn't playing any football at that stage, and now he's playing week in, week out.
Yeah, I'd like to think that. And Jeff's been a brilliant servant for Irish football, really has. But I'd like to think that Malumbi's now ready to overtake that sort of position and make that his own. Cullen Malumbi, and whatever the configurations ahead of that will be at different stages. So I think we could do with that sort of whatever. I don't like using numbers, whether it's a 6 and an 8 or 2 6s. I think Malumbi and Cullen are really potentially really good combination. And I think it's probably time for Stephen. Well, it's a big decision for him because he's been loyal to Jeff, and I think Jeff's a senior member of the squad, but it's a big decision.
Seems a stretch to say this, but familiarity is key in terms of players, getting used to playing alongside each other. Like Malumbi, if he does play, does that give Darragh O'Shea any increased chance of playing? The fact that, I think they're roommates together as well in Birmingham, and they're playing together every week for West Brom. Is that familiarity an important thing in Stephen's mind, I wonder?
I think it is in terms of players. I have to say, I think the FEI, the small bits and pieces you see of it, I think they've been very good and clever in their social media output. You really get the sense, and I know some people who work within the staff. It's not something I'd ever really discuss with Stephen, but I mean people in the staff. You really get a sense there's a real good band of sort of brothers developing here in terms of this group, and it helps when so many young players are coming through at the same time and they've played a lot. So I think that's huge in terms of building something. I always reference Wales and what they've done, getting to major championships and progressing, and you felt that with Wales, the trick with Wales was they built, okay, the Gareth Bale to get the big moments, never get away from that, but they built it almost like a club team. And I get the sense this Irish team is doing that. So O'Shea and Malumbi's you would imagine, is like the clip with James McLean, Ribbon Nathan Collins is brilliant. brilliant. And the fact he left it, because that's what goes on in dressing rooms.
Yeah.
And when the cameras aren't there, it's probably a little bit worse as well, like, to be fair. So I think that that is a huge point. I think a lot of these lads are growing up together, and I think the evolution of them helps. But we made this point for the last 2 years, but we can't control the club form ultimately, and that's why we're going to have to pick on form again. I keep saying it.
Josh Cullen's form since he's moved has been excellent.
Yeah, and I'm going to put it out there. I was a doubter at times of Josh Cullen, not because I didn't think he could become a good player or he has all the attributes. I think I was looking at him going, go to the next stage, his career development has been brilliant, and I'm starting to feel now he's gone to the next stage. He has to, particularly that position, it's so important. Like, I remember one of the earlier games where Ireland really struggled, and looking at the stats as you do as a coach after game, and he never got the ball and passed to Matt Doherty or right wing back at any stage, and you're like, that's a big problem for someone who's going to play in the six, as in getting it off the left wing back and going out to the right wing back. Why? Because the opposition have to shift all the way over. But I've started to see him added now as little things to his game, a little bit of confidence, more forward passes, I think, from him. And he's gone up, not that he needs to impress me, but he's gone up I think he's gone up and improved. I think we've overhyped him to where he is, but he's actually getting closer to that hype, if that makes sense in my view. And I think that move to England has really helped him now. It's like, I've done my hard work, I've learned the ropes, and he's with a manager now that ultimately really trusts him. So I think now we're starting to see the fruits of that.
And he's still only 26. You know, like, he could be a really good player for the next 6 or 8 years for Ireland, and at club level as well. So fingers crossed they're going to be fighting out for promotion this year. So are you feeling confident? Like, you made the point, to wrap this up, you made the point that Scotland have a load of players who are playing Premier League football and are actually also in good form. You know, Andy Robertson's out, and they've got 3 other guys who can fit in there who are like all very good.
Yeah. I think the last window was really difficult for Scotland. They lost their game, the playoff for the World Cup. They came to Ireland. I believe it was a really bad squad and sort of bad vibe after being knocked out. They did really difficult. Premiership players don't like those end of season 4-game windows. They're really, really difficult, where us as fans go, just get on with it, you're playing for your country. It was really difficult. I think when you look at their midfield that started that day, McGregor, Scott McTominay and McGinn, it's probably better than our midfield, in fairness.
Yeah.
Right? But they didn't play well in the day. We out-hassled them, we outworked them, all of those things. I don't think it'd be like that in Hampden. But their manager's under a lot of pressure, and they need a result. He needs a result. But momentum is huge in football. We look like we've a bit of momentum going into the game. They look like they don't. So it's probably a big game for both managers in many ways. And I'd make Scotland slight favourites, believe it or not, even though they beat us quite well.
Yeah.
Here.
I think they've definitely got a better selection of players. It depends on what he does with this window, and if it's like one of those, I'm not going to pick my full team, I'm going to broaden my squad here, so he buys himself that little bit of time and it's all building for the Euros. Or if he picks his full team,
can afford to do that.
Well, I was going to say, you pick your full team and go balls out and try and win it, and like,
I heard talking about young players earlier on while I was in the car, and I'm going, the answer to we won't get into it now, but the answer is, you're a manager, if they've got to win the next game nowadays. Football is now cutthroat. You don't get long term.
They don't care about the players. They care about winning results.
Winning. Short answer to it, now that is the job of the director of football, to manage the club longer term. Managers are managing the short term windows. They're hoping it's 2 or 3 years. Lucky enough, it might be 7 or 8. Director of footballs are meant to mind these people and say, no, he's a long term one for us. That's the way it's meant to work.
All right, that makes perfect sense. As ever. Vinny, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. That's Vinny Perth with us there. News coming through from Liverpool that Leanne Kiernan is going to be out for several months. She needs surgery. They've just released a statement. It did look bad when she got taken off injured after it was in the middle of the first game of the season. So they're saying that it is going to require surgery, and she is set to miss several months. Is the one. Leanne Kiernan says, thank you to all the fans who reached out to me. Your support means a lot. I'm looking forward to getting back out there as soon as I can. See you soon. That's very bad news from an Ireland perspective, and for Vera Pauw over the next several months. She will be needed So fingers crossed the surgery goes well and the recovery comes fast, and we wish her the very best with that as well. Right, we're back after these ads with Brendan Ó Dufaigh, who is the author of Almost Ogie. First, here's Republic of Ireland midfielder Jason Malumbi speaking to the media.
Yeah, I think so. I think it just came to that stage in my career. I think initially I stayed in for 6 months before going on loan to Preston, and I felt the club were how would I say, interested in giving me more opportunity at the start of the window but yeah, I didn't end up getting to play as much as I wanted at Brighton, so I went out on loan, and then I think it just came to a decision where, you know, obviously a bid came in from West Brom and I decided to take it. So yeah, I was happy as well. I think it was the right move for me. You know, I was 21 and I need to get out and try and find myself and play regularly. So yeah, it's been difficult, I suppose, because obviously we haven't got the results we want. But to be honest, I think you need a bit of luck in football, and I just don't think we've had it. I think, listen, the table speaks for itself, and at the end of the day, we're in the business. You need to win games and climb up the table. But I think if you've watched the 10 games, I think there's no way we should be where we are. But that's how it is. That's football, and we need to. There's obviously areas we need to do better in. But yeah, Dara's threat for set pieces and stuff, especially. You know, I've known Dara since I was a young lad, so to come up, I feel like we have a good relationship with each other. And obviously, he's been captain now a few games for West Brom this season. He's doing really well. So Dara's a great lad, and I'll get on really well with him. So.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Conor Callaghan had just arrived, like he scored a goal after 83 seconds of his first All-Ireland final. Like, it was just ridiculous.
Subscribe to the OTB GAA podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts.
If your business relies on a van, that wouldn't sound good, but this does. Get up to 75% off van insurance. Now available in FBD branches nationwide. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. 75% no claims discount based on 5 years claims free. Available on new van policies used for farm or business purposes. Terms and conditions apply. Underwritten by FBD Insurance plc. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Celebrate European Week of Sport this September at the Be Active Festival. An action-packed day out for the whole family at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Come and try new sports, fitness challenges and skill tests at Ireland's biggest sporting festival. Meet sporting legends. Check out the Inflatable Zone, Village Food Market and much more. There's something for everyone at the Be Active Festival. Saturday, September 24th at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Book your tickets now at beactivefestival.ie.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, I'm delighted to say that we have the author of this lovely book, Almost Ogie, Brendan Ó Dufaigh, with us this morning. Brendan, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Ger. How are you?
Is it Brendan or Brendan? Brendan, okay. I was thinking, reading through the book, that I'd love to be able to do this interview in Irish, but unfortunately my Irish is not good enough.
Not to worry.
But the book is bilingual.
It is.
Yeah, because you guys are bilingual. Did you speak Irish at home?
We did. The children always spoke Irish to me, Irish to the mum. Not fanatical, but that was the natural course of events in the home. And they could change mid-sentence from Irish to English if they were changing from one parent to another.
Yeah. And that's why it seems so natural when you're flicking through the book that large portions of it are Os Gaeilge. And
I had a big association with the Gaeltacht and Donegal in an area called Ranafast in the northwest of the county. So there would be quite a few readers down there as well, and Irish would be the medium that I would use speaking to them all the time.
I have a theory that, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but my kids are in school now and they're coming back learning Irish, and I'm realising how much of a gap there is in my life that I'm not fluent. And I did, I don't know if I got the name right, Mac and Megan is talking about there's 100 words for this and there's 100 words for this, and I really feel that coming across in the book, that there's like a depth to the feeling that you're able to explain and understand and experience, and it feels to me that it's somehow intensified Os Gaeilge. And
well, even in the context of Ogie and his death, the texts to me were very important that I received. And most of the texts that I received in Irish appeared that the wording, that the language was much more intimate or deeper. And they're kind of contemporaneous, and they still have a lot of meaning to me. I remember where I was. I remember how I felt when I opened those texts. And as I said, most of them that have remained with me would have been texted through the Irish language.
I totally understand that, because there's kind of a loneliness about the English that we use around these circumstances, but there's just so many different ways to speak Os Gaeilge.
There seems to be a depth there, certainly, that they catch the emotions much more so through the medium of Irish. And a lot of people would have texted me in Irish and in English over that time, during the night, from the night he died until after the funeral. And as I said, the Irish ones really caught me.
That was one of the other things that we were chatting about beforehand when we were talking about this. Like, there's no template for dealing with grief, but it does seem that the contact that you got from people was one of the things that really gave you comfort. And if there's anything that anybody takes from this, is like, if you know anybody who's going through anything, or if anybody's experiencing grief, reach out.
Certainly reach out. We didn't know what was going to happen. I remember taking Ogie's body home from the morgue in Navan, and on the outskirts of Castleblaney, everybody appeared to be out on the streets. The shops were closed. Half the road was closed. The Fogs, that's the local team in Castleblaney, all their teams from juvenile to senior level were out. That really took us by surprise. And it struck me at that moment that this really isn't an ordinary funeral, and that we are only playing a part in it as other people are playing their parts as well. And kind of even on that journey home, in my own area, I'm a native of Cromartin Club, an intermediate club. Again, they were out on the road there, as they were in Clontibret, and again the Monaghan Harps throughout the town. And that really caught me off guard. Nobody knew officially what time we were taking Ogie's remains home from the hospital, but nevertheless they were out there. And I think as time has gone on, I appreciate the relevance and the significance of that support more and more. That it certainly got us through those early days.
Yeah.
And that they were there for, it was overwhelming, and it seemed to capture the national consciousness, his death. I don't know, a young fella after playing a match, captain a team, winning a team on the way home. I suppose all those circumstances together added to it.
Yeah, of course. And I think, like, obviously it gets you through that immediate short-term period when, again, I don't think anybody's ever going to understand exactly what you go through, but in the months afterwards you can lean back on that experience too, when the people are gone, and when the busyness of the funeral, like we're great in Ireland around funerals, but it's the weeks after and the months after, when there's moments of silence that normally you would have been filling with conversations, where you can lean back on that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to accept that people are going to get on with their own lives. I couldn't expect anything from any more from anybody else, particularly the Monaghan County Board, and even more so Monaghan Harps, the personnel in there, the officers, the players, that they really took 3-4 days out of their lives to spend with us, be it guards of honour, taking chairs to the house, food, everything, sitting up the last night with him, his teammates on the senior Harps team.
Like when you speak with those people, Brendan, the people that line the streets, and I recall your words even at the graveside as well in Latlerkin on the day of that scorching hot day of the funeral, and I was there in the wake house as well the night before, when a lot of stories were being swapped and a few laughs as well as tears amongst a lot of the teammates. It strikes me, maybe for people who don't realise, you might just tell us the type of person Ogie was, and also, funnily enough, the type of person you learned Ogie to be after his death, because I'm sure a lot of stories came out thereafter.
Well, I was going to point that out, and it's one of the first sentences in the book. We didn't really know Ogie until after his death. And I suppose that's true of anybody. We know one side of a person, but it takes somebody in another sphere, be it in the workplace or socialising, that will add something to that as well. And we heard so many stories, and they were all positive, and they were all very uplifting. I suppose a few adjectives to describe him. Well, this is as a father, a loving father saying this, but he was very determined, he was tenacious, he was loyal, hard-working, humble, in that he had many friends who had no interest in football. And even he might come from a big match and meet some other guys, and football wouldn't be mentioned. And he had no problem with that. He was carefree, happy-go-lucky, always in good form, incredibly positive, good mental health throughout his life. mischievous. I'm not making him out to be anything but. He was a devil at times, and mischievous. And maybe that in itself gave him a bit of credibility when he did speak. And what struck me as well is how he appeared to have such a cross-section of friends. And during the time of the funeral, we had people from Lithuania, from Latvia, from Poland. Many people from the travelling community came into the house. It was the natural thing for them to do. And again, they were out on the streets in the Guard of Honour on the day of his funeral. So he seemed to have this knack or skill, if you like, of getting on well with everybody, irrespective of their background.
It was a sense of, it was nearly a sense of leadership as well. The fact that he was 19, and yet lads in the club team who were in their early to mid 30s, when he spoke, it carried weight, and you know, he had those leadership qualities, which is quite remarkable for someone of his age.
Yeah, and you know, at 19, and he kind of appeared to move seamlessly into the senior team. That people did listen, and again, we didn't know that until after the funeral. His birthday was in early November. It coincided with the Harps' last championship match, and for that occasion, the rest of the team sent messages to him posthumously, a kind of complimenting him, and that came out about the leadership qualities that he had for them, and how he always had their back, and that he would support them, and that they could depend on him. And that is all very consoling for us. I certainly wasn't that boy at 19, 20 years of age. I didn't realise that Ogie was. We knew snippets of stuff here and there. Like, he helped people with their mental health. He helped people whose cars broke down. He gave people lifts home at nights at the weekend because he wouldn't be drinking because of matches or with the county, etc. And you certainly would hear him in and out in the landing throughout the night, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, he didn't share that with us. But those stories gradually came together during the 3 or the 4 days of the week.
When did you make the decision that you were going to chronicle all this and write it down and have the record kept and published, that you have published?
Well, I've written a number of books, in textbooks in the Irish language for Irish medium Gael College, so it's nothing new to me writing, if you like. Shortly after the funeral, I thought about taking notes and keeping notes, and just to remember everything that did happen. There were so many facets to it. So the notes got greater, and then it was into essay format, and then it came into a book. And I'd say it was therapeutic for me in hindsight. Can't be sure of that, but I think it was, because I'm as good now as I would expect myself to be. But I am, and just there was some sense of that you were doing him justice, that you were paying tribute to him by putting this inside 2 covers.
Yeah, and that makes sense, I think. And the other thing is that you don't want to forget any of the good stories that, like, so Shane's talking about that night. Like, obviously, is it traumatic to revisit any of that, or at this stage now?
Some of it's traumatic to revisit, some of it is, but that doesn't say it's a bad thing to do it. Sometimes you have to face that. And I suppose I would have said to myself during the summer and holidays from school, I must give myself a day or half a day to go through all this, the most traumatic elements of it, and allow myself to cry. Now, I didn't get that half day due to comings and goings and other commitments, but I suppose it's not the done thing to be crying. So I think most times when we shed a tear, we try to conceal it, or we try to restrict it. But this allowed me late at night to shed a tear privately.
Yeah.
And that, I think, has been beneficial.
I think, I don't think anybody would begrudge you that. Or I think maybe we all need to start having those conversations where it's totally fine. And it's actually a very natural thing. Like, why did we evolve as human beings with the facility to cry? Probably because our body needs the physical release of it, not just the mental release.
I have a large circle of friends who have been very good to me for the last year and a half, probably sick listening to me talking about Ogie, but they afforded me that opportunity, and that certainly has been advantageous.
Yeah, and with the book, obviously, like, we're asking you questions, and again, what's it right for us to ask you? What's it right for us to talk about? What's it like, what do we absolutely have to ask?
Well, there's no embargo on anything.
No, but you know what I mean? Like, what is the right thing? We don't know, because
there's nothing right and there's nothing wrong, and grief doesn't mean the same thing to two people. There are 4 of us, myself, my wife Esther, 2 girls in the house, Claire and Anya, and we're on 4 parallel paths. And those paths don't really cross over. And we don't talk, we talk in general about Ogie, and we reminisce about it, but we don't go into much depth. Maybe we're afraid to, because every other person is hurting as much as you, and they're on the same journey, maybe further ahead of you, maybe approaching it in a different way. So we respect that.
One of the things, Brendan, that struck me, and that parallel pathways thing really struck me in the book as well. You're talking about grief was even on the night itself, trying to deal with it. And you name-checked Paddy McGinn, the local priest in Monaghan. And if you don't mind me saying the line that you've written in the book, the line that Paddy said was, "Ogie's gone tonight. He has left us tonight." And you emphasise in the book how it made some of the gut-wrenching moments later on in the following days maybe a little bit easier.
He certainly, he actually shook me on the shoulder and repeated that and emphasised that a few times. Now, how did that make things easier for me over the following few days? I think the coffin or his remains leaving the house, or even the actual burying and lowering into the grave, that I know he was already gone, and I had accepted that from what Father McGinn had said to me. And I think, yes, it did make it easier, that those moments were merely symbolic, that he was gone, his spirit, his soul, whatever you want to call it. It was the mortal remains only that were with us.
That whole process that you detail, it is obviously, it's heartbreaking. And yet, at the same time, I think the fact that you've shared it in such detail will help people who read it, who have experienced grief themselves. And I don't know if that was part of your aim when you wrote it, because the motivation is clearly to do justice to a life that was really well lived. But I do think that, like, the more we talk about these things, the more that there is a shorthand. We're really good at funerals in Ireland, right? But I'm not sure that we're great at dealing with the aftermath of the funeral when the silence comes.
Well, I suppose it's going to become more private and more personal. And that's when you have to deal with it yourself or in a family unit, and everybody goes back to their own lives. And even in the sporting world, the number of tragic deaths like Red Oak in Sligo, and the Camogie player in County Galway, and just a short time was that after it, the Kilkenny and St. Kieran's College, the first-year student there. So other tragedies take over, and regrettably more and more tragedies come to the fore. And what struck me as well was the number of people who came into the house giving us their condolences, who also suffered similar losses over the years, be it young siblings or young sons or daughters. So we have no monopoly on grief, and every one of those people have an entitlement to a voice, just as I have, and I'm very mindful of that.
But I think you've actually helped them in a way by so clearly expressing what you've gone through in the detail that you've gone through. It is really helpful to people. When you think about it, we're all going to suffer grief at some point in our lives, because of the very nature of human life is we all die, right? But we don't really have templates for it, or conversations openly about crying and about I know recently there's been some more books about it, but we're not very good at talking to people. I'm not feeling great because I'm grieving for something, and I think that
a number of people already would have spoken to me about the book, and where their parents or somebody belonged to them, that it has helped them, certain passages that they've read, that it resonated with them on some level. And I'm delighted about that if it would help. And that's why I've done a number of radio interviews and an article in the Sunday Independent that Rodney Edwards penned shortly after the funeral, to hopefully that it will help. I feel so indebted to so many people that were good to us, that if I can give something back to somebody else who is in mourning or grieving, and I'm not going to, I suppose when I go into wake houses now, I say a lot less. I would be a lot less dogmatic, do this and do that, and this is what it would be. No, it's so different for so many people. And to afford people the opportunity or the space to talk, and to be there for them, to listen, and to support them, whatever they want to do, whatever help they want from you.
Yeah.
I even recall speaking at the Monaghan Harps event in the Hillgrove Hotel that yourself and your daughter Claire were at, where Sean Kavanagh spoke about the loss of Cormac McAnallen and kind of compared it to that of Ogie in some regards. And I know Donald McAnallen, Cormac's brother, I think was in the wake house at one stage.
Donald, yes.
It must be, I don't know if comforting is the word, but it must be in some way nice to speak to people who have gone through it before.
It is, and I suppose it gives you a bit of confidence here. This guy is a number of years after the tragic death of his brother, and he's got through it or getting through it. And that is my objective, to be on the same road as him and to continue, and that, hopefully things will work out reasonably well for us. I suppose I don't go to the grave too often, and maybe once a week, brief visits. I don't want the conversation of death and dying and the deceased to become a priority in my life. I don't want to be morbid or negative. I'd like to think that my default setting is jovial and positive, and I'd like to continue with that. So I'm not great at sharing other people's experience in a graveyard setting.
Yeah,
and
that's understandable.
Yeah, whereas my wife would, and go around to other graves and console people who are coming and going. Now, it's interesting that really on his right and on his left there are two other Harps people as well. The one on his right would be Charlie Shalvey, who would be the father of the secretary of the club, and he's fairly recently deceased. And Nicola, the daughter, was such an immense strength to us throughout this, and she posted something online the morning of Ogie's funeral quite early on, and it was very touching and very poignant, and all of what was written and said about him, including by Shane on the Friday evening here on Off the Ball, it was so touching, and it's included in the book. That it gets to you inside. Now, a lot of these articles, if you like, the epicentre of them was Ogie, but they broadened out to maybe some facet of GAA or Monaghan GAA, or clubs losing players, or players struggling to keep players, or some aspect of football. But I suppose the starting point was with Ogie, and they finished off, wrapped off a lot of these articles about Ogie as well.
And that's a legacy, and like it's terrible to talk about somebody so young having a legacy without actually having the opportunity to live it. But like, and the book is a legacy in some ways as well.
It is, and it will always be there as part of my tribute to him. I suppose I devoted most of the year after his death in trying to perpetuate his memory, and I've often noticed that it's a fear among people that their loved ones will be forgotten. But I don't think that will happen with Ogie. And even on his tribute night in Monaghan Town, the county council, or the municipal council, renamed a road Slee Ogie Guffey. We felt Slee was a milder or softer word than Boher. I think in the Irish language there's 8 words for roads, depending on Cowsa and Cassan and Ballochmore and Boher and Slee. We felt Slee was the better one, or the best one that was available, in consultation with the council. There was a plaque unveiled outside the Harps complex as well, and then the book was launched by Con O'Callaghan inside. So it was a big night. It was a very uplifting night, very positive night.
Yeah.
And there were people there in the audience who had suffered loss themselves. I mentioned Red Oak, I mentioned the girl from Galway. There was Eve Bourne, a girl under 12 years of age who played football with her club in Mahratloon, who was killed in a farming accident, or farming related accident. And I mentioned her, I referenced her on that night, but there was an auntie in the audience and came up and appreciated that. People like to be remembered.
Yeah, no, it's true. Slee means way, right? Yeah. And Ogie's way essentially is kind of what you've one of the things that seems like you've understood more from the stories that people have told you, the lives he's touched. Not to bring it back, it's a wonderful life, right? That whole sense of you don't really know about the lives that you touch until you get the opportunity, and then
Yeah, and hopefully that we are touching out and we're reaching out to some people through the book, and anything else that we've done, be it the article in the Sunday Independent, or the Radio 1 interview, or indeed this interview, or the Radio na Gaeltacht interview. Just to mention that it was to start off as a short interview, but it evolved into a full 1 hour documentary presented by Michelle Nicreana and produced by Donal McRory. And it's actually nominated for a Nimro Award now next month. But I would know both Michelle and Donal quite well, and her links in the interview with me I found very final. That this is somebody else saying that for the first year after his death, I could speak about Ogie, that he was dead, that he was gone. I'm not stupid, but I'm not sure if I realised that if I acknowledge that inside, if I recognise, I'm not sure what verb to use. But funny enough, after the tribute night, and a year had passed, it became more final and more real for me, in that I couldn't refer back to this day last year. What was Ogie doing, or was he away working, or was he in the car, or was he playing a match? He wasn't with us this time last year. So that even crossover was significant, that there is now certainly a realisation that he's gone. And actually a number of people who had suffered loss at the wake house told me, you won't realise for a year that he's dead. That was true. That was true.
How important are items, you know, I'm thinking back to, well, I remember at the burial, I think was it the Down or the Donegal players came over. The Donegal players certainly came over that had played in the previous week. I know the Down, there was a minute's applause at the Ulster Under-20 final that Ogie should have been leading the team out at the following week or two. And you have at home, and it's mentioned in the book as well, the framed Donegal jersey from that game, and also a framed Monaghan jersey unwashed that Ogie wore literally a couple of hours before.
Yeah, and I suppose it's the closest we'll get to him. I think that's mentioned in the book, that his DNA is still on it. It's framed, it's unwashed, and that was purposely done like that. I would collect memorabilia. I'd been doing so from the under the 18 or the under 17 final, and that campaign where they won the league and championship double in Ulster in 2018. And I felt like years to come when we're gone, maybe Ogie'd like to show all these things to his friends or to his family. And on that tribute night, there was a kind of a display, or I think exhibition might be too grand of a word to describe it, but there was a mini exhibition of everything belonged to him: jerseys, football programme, newspaper cuttings, medals, etc. And we have a large box at home, and jerseys and that, and everything's in that. And as you say, Shane, the Donegal jersey worn by the number 6 is on the wall. And ironically, I would have known him and his parents very well from the Gidor club, neighbouring area to Ranafast, if you like. And the goalkeeper, Dahi Roberts, as well. I would know his parents very well, and they were playing that night, and Ogie would have met them over the years and went and acknowledged them at the beginning of the match and again at the end of the match. And the families were with us the following day, as were many from the Donegal team, and the management from the under-20 team were with us, including Eamon McGee and Huey McGarvey as well, Oni McGarvey, another Ranafast man. So this help from the GA community, it wasn't limited to the Harps or to the Monaghan County Board, it was in Ulster. And indeed we got so many letters from inter-county players and retired inter-county players from throughout the country, and from the parents of players. Many we didn't know, and indeed many people that I hadn't met in my life for the last 30 years maybe.
Yeah.
But they could tell me what I said to them verbatim 25, 30, 32 years ago when they suffered loss. Or maybe somebody that's you helped me with a CV, or you did a mock interview with me, or you give me reference books for a course I was doing, or you phoned up somebody on my behalf or whatever. The number of people, I would feel that anything I gave for the rest of my life all came back from me twofold, threefold since Ogie's death.
Yeah. I think was it Nia Fitzpatrick, who's the grief counsellor. I think she's written a couple of books on the subject. Now her sister Dara Fitzpatrick was of course one of the Rescue 116 helicopter pilots, and I think it was her that spoke about, as difficult as it is to remember, the last conversation she had with Dara, and how trivial maybe it seemed at the time. But everyone who has lost someone, and yourself included, has had to deal with that. And even though probably looking back, Brendan, it's a trivial conversation, it's a tangible thing for you to hold on to now, that conversation with Ogie.
Yeah, well, it might have been a fragmented conversation. It was really before he went to the match. My wife Esther was in Medjugorje on pilgrimage. They were playing in Enniskillen that evening against Donegal. I think he had to be out in Ploughing, which is the centre of excellence, where the bus was leaving at 3:30. His younger sister Anya was making the dinner. The dinner had to be ready at 2:50. And a kind of our day was revolving around this, that he would be gone at the right time that he wanted. seemed a little bit nervous, kept asking the time, what time is it now? 3:05, what time is it? 3:10, what time is it? 3:15. And around this time, and maybe an hour beforehand, he would have been visited by a number of Harps players, just wishing him well, and good luck for the match, and coming into the street, spending a few minutes and talking to him. Now, Esther was speaking to him after the match, and we went for a takeaway on the way home, 10:30, 11 o'clock, and as we were leaving the takeaway, my younger daughter, Anya, got a voice message for him to get him a takeaway. So she returned into the takeaway, got him that, and that takeaway remained on the table throughout the night.
It's so heartbreaking, and I know we can see how difficult it is to revisit it, but
it's just certain moments like that, leaving the house to go to the match on that last day, there are certain things that would get to you, and even during the time of the funeral there were certain things impacted on me more than others, if you like. As I mentioned, Castleblaney and how the streets were thronged there, the Harps staying up in the wake house on the last night, and two of his friends who have nothing to do with football, wouldn't know the shape of a football, spent the night in his room, and the guards of honour from the house to the cathedral, the senior team filing into the house at about 9 o'clock on the previous night, including Seamus McEnany, the team man, or Seamus was with them, and Andy Callan, who was the under-20 manager. Seamus Banty McEnany was with them then, the under-18 level. I suppose watching the video on the first occasion was difficult as well, the video of the funeral. The round of applause that we got going into Old Cross Square, a spontaneous round of applause from the people in the Guard of Honour as we were approaching the cathedral. Looking at the Derry minor team that were there as well, and the Down team who they were to play the following week on elevated ground in the graveyard. I mentioned the text messages earlier, quite poignant, very touching, very deep, very intimate. So those are kind of standout moments, if you like, and I suppose this synopsise the generosity, the kindness that we received from so many people. It was overwhelming, really.
It's a sign of the lives that you guys have obviously touched, separate to him, and then the lives that he touched as well. And we're a sports programme here, and he was obviously a young sports star, but the involvement with the community, it's obviously not just the GAA, it's the Irish language, and it's everything else that you've been involved in as well, that all those communities rallied around.
There's no doubt about that, and initially he might have started playing soccer at 6 or 7 years of age, but soon realised that it was Gaelic football that was embedded in the community, and soon realised that it was the game of Gaelic football that had the high national profile, and that this is what he should be at. And he was also interested in boxing and gymnastics and rugby, but there weren't simply enough days in the week to bring him to everything. He did play basketball at school level and club level. The Blackwater Steelers, he would have spent a number of years swimming with Slave Bay and represented them as well. He was just agile, he was an athlete, and irrespective of what sport it was, and I suppose they were all complementing each other and to his benefit.
Just from my perspective, Brendan, obviously before we finish, and I've said it before in that chair, was that the funeral was obviously something that I'd never seen the likes of before in Monaghan, and I'm unlikely to see it ever again. I think the strength you showed in speaking at the graveside for the 10 minutes or whatever it was I'd never seen anything like it, and the family and the way it was handled by the GAA and by yourselves. And look, just appreciate you coming in, and I think
I had no intention to speak at the funeral at all or in the graveyard, but my wife nudged me to say a word of thanks to Andy Callan, the under-20 manager, who had spoken before that. And then when I did take the microphone, I felt it incumbent on me to thank a few people and maybe to emphasise the work of the GAA, Monaghan Harps and all the Monaghan Harps around the country, that for what they do for young people, and irrespective of whatever grants they get from national government, it's not half enough for the work they do, be it mental health. And I just posed the question, what would the majority of young lads and indeed girls be doing if they weren't playing Gaelic football? That they are actually filling a massive void there on behalf of the government to ensure positive mental health among our young people.
We talked about the Irish words having multiple meanings. What does almost mean to you?
Almost would be tribute,
right?
Yeah, I suppose, and it's broader than tribute as well. It's difficult actually to specifically translate a word from one language to another. But the easiest thing to say is that it's tribute, but it's deeper, it's broader than that.
Yeah,
it's respected, and it takes massive respect into it as well.
When I was googling it, mass was what came across as well, and it's like so. I think you've managed to pull it off, and obviously it's been a heartbreaking work to do, but it feels like it's given you, and I hope your family and anybody who reads it, some room.
There's no doubt about it. It has been beneficial, and we have that as a memory, and it's there. It's available in the shops, and it's selling well. And it's a kind of a present, really, a gift to people. It's a tenner. It would have cost much more to, when you're doing them in relatively small numbers, to be printed. You're not going to make money in a book. That wasn't the intention. It's really a gift to the community and the GA people. So while it's a book of loss and grief, it's also a book of the vibrancy of youth and about football, and particularly football in Monaghan and in the Harps.
And if anybody does want to get their hands on it, where can they get it?
It's in Easton's in Monaghan Town, in SuperValue in Castleblaney, and Bordy's in Carrickmacross.
I'd be similar enough to Ger in that my Irish has probably let it go since the leaving cert. I think I said on the day when I was speaking about him in here, and Eva Aleha de Rishon, we'll never see his likes again. But I think you've done a seriously important thing here in writing the book, and you probably don't even realise it yet, Brendan, but a lot of people are going to pick up copies of this book and take something from it, because we all go through loss at some point. So fair play for doing it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks a million for coming in today. That's today's show. We'll leave it there. I'll see you tomorrow.
So we don't talk AFL all that often, but the Premiership Grand Final is on Saturday, 5:30 Irish time. If you're feeling like getting up early, Melbourne Cricket Ground. It's Sydney Swans against Geelong Cats, and there is plenty of Irish interest. Mark O'Connor from Dingle and Zach Toohey, of course, who's a mainstay in the AFL at this stage, are playing for Geelong Cats. Very happy to say Colm Begley with us, Laois footballer, AFL career 06 to 09. With St Kilda and Brisbane Lions, and Laois footballer on his return as well, announced his retirement this year from intercounty football. Colm, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me.
So just actually, I'm curious, so we have a frame of reference for you. Your relationship with the AFL, have you continued to watch it, enjoy it, keep tabs? Did you fall in love with the sport?
Yeah, I did actually. Well, when I left, probably the first time around, stayed in touch for a while watching it. It's probably got a bit easier now with the coverage you get as well. The last few years, and there's an AFL app I have as well that I look at, so it's much easier now the last few years to keep in touch with it, and I've kind of fallen in love with it a bit more as well over the last 2 years again, watching it a bit more, and obviously the fact that Zach and Mark have been going so well as well, and Pierce as well. Pierce Hanley obviously retired a few years ago, but he was having a pretty strong career too at Brisbane, so it's kept me in touch in some sense. But the AFL final series this year has been one of the most exciting I've seen in a while, so it's been, I suppose, 2 reasons to keep in touch with it. One, very exciting games, but then Zach's been going so well as well, so it's been really fantastic to watch.
Yeah, we had a text in actually before you joined us saying that the semi-final between Hawthorn and Sydney was one of the great sporting spectacles you'll see all year, so it does sound like the knockout stages have been very good. The naysayers for the sport would talk about it being too stop-start. So where is the sport in your opinion as a spectacle, and like what are the real attractions of it for you?
Yeah, to be fair, if you haven't had past experience of the game, or you only watch here and there, I can understand why people would see it maybe as a bit of a scrappy sport, or there are games where it's very much contest heavy. The skill may not look as strong, and even the last number of years, probably the last 2 years, there's probably less accurate delivery and more so playing for territory. I think you'll find that a lot of games try and move the ball up into contested areas and put a lot of pressure on, actually Sydney and Collingwood are probably, or sorry, Sydney and Geelong are renowned for being the two highest pressure teams, I think, in the comp this year as well. So I can understand that, but they've changed the rules a small bit. I think it was 2 years ago they had a very low scoring season, and they've actually changed the man in the mark rule, which means the man in the mark has to stop and stand, which allows players to roll on a bit more and move the game a bit faster. I think even a lot of teams are trying to play that more erratic, but more so kind of off the cuff, exciting, fast flowing games to catch teams out. So Collingwood went for 17th there last year to, obviously one kick away from being in the grand final, and they were very much playing the fast game. And Geelong even was, after their non-success in the last grand final, had to adapt their game, and they've definitely changed to being a much more free-flowing team and trying to play on. So if you follow the games, I think this year would have been a really good year to follow. It's been some good footy, but I can understand people who haven't watched it that much, probably not understanding the goods of it and what it gives. But I think the one thing about it is that even if doesn't look pretty, it does bring up some very close contests and a lot of excitement. So that's one thing I think that can really show off to maybe fans if they're watching the game. It's very exciting in the last quarter if it's close. So I've enjoyed it. It's a really great year.
It's interesting to hear you talk about those tactical evolutions in the game, which are happening in all sports. GAA and Premier League has changed beyond all recognition over the last decade. So it's a very different sport to the one you would have played, it sounds like, 06 to 09.
I think it's definitely changed. I think it's like even Melbourne, who were last year's winners, I think they were caught out probably trying to play the territory too much and launching the ball into contests when there was probably a few men spare. I remember playing with actually Nigel Lappin, who was an assistant coach for Geelong, and Simon Black and some of these greats in the middle of the field, and they probably looked for a lot more smaller passes into the forward line, lowering the eyes a small bit. So the game has definitely changed, like all games, as you mentioned. Like it's definitely adapting in some way, but from what I saw to now, it's evolving. But it's interesting enough. Teams have to evolve, and that's one thing I think Geelong were really good. Both teams actually, but Geelong especially, they've figured out that they have to try and change their game, because as a professional side, you look at the top teams, how can we break them down? How can we beat them? What are they doing good? So you can't just go out the same way next year and think it's going to work out. It just won't. There's too much people putting too much time into focusing on how can we get better, first of all, it's going to change. But then also, how can we break